one knowing you left it. Connected. Let's just hit the plug and get connected. Feel it through your body, don't want my electric. Let's get.
If you feel the way I do, go make you move. 'Cause I need you to help me for the night. So feel the way I do, go make you move. 'Cause I need you.
Can't focus, but your body give me clarity. I can tell the way you move and how you scare me. I'm obsessed with the way you caress me. I undress you with my eyes and you bless me. I confess my love and affection. I'm blinded by all the imperfection. Recognize the dark in you perfection. Can't wait to make you my selection. North side, let's get connected. West side, let's get connected. East side, let's get connected. South side, let's get connected. Worldwide, let's get connected. Local side, let's get connected. Online, let's disconnect it. Offline, let's get connected.
Let's get connected. The way I do, go make you move. 'Cause I need you to help me for the night. So the way I do, go make you move. 'Cause I need you.
I need you. North side, let's get connected. West side, let's get connected. East side, let's get connected. South side, let's get connected. Worldwide, let's get connected. Local side, let's get connected. Online, let's disconnect it. Offline, let's get connected. Wondering why I've never felt human. Am I alone? Do I belong here?
With a scoreline like we saw at the end of Map 1, it truly is a guessing game, Dallas, as to what will come still in front of us for Map 2. It's West Virginia 1-0 above Stony Brook right now, but that first map was as close as you could possibly ask for without heading us into overtime.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it could have gone to the 13-11, but I mean, still close enough, seeing how things are going. I mean, Stony Brook, they were kind of on par, considering that we saw West Virginia, what felt like always desperately grasping for a good round. And in those last couple rounds, that's what they needed. I mean, especially finding a spree. Eventually, it was a very small margin of making sure to get there, but still enough alone. And if we saw that kind of go to the flip side, because even on that Thrifty, they invested a lot just to get themselves into a circumstance of getting into that guaranteed overtime. And even then, still barely found it by a narrow margin. But I mean, that round following was very definitive. So clearly getting in kind of back into the routine a little bit. A very big hiccup that kind of started during that second half of map number 1. But beyond that, I think they're right back into it and knowing they're going to buy next. This should be a map where they kind of feel a lot more at home. This is a map they love selecting just across the entirety of the split and the semester on top of that. So if there's a place for them to really wake up and show what they're made of, this should, and quite frankly, if you're going to semis, better be the place to show that.
I think the bigger thing here as well is if you are Stony Brook and you can look back on that map, I'm sure you're playing in other places, right? Is your agent select for map 1 the reason why you had so many difficulties in that first half? And was it the reason for your successes in the second? Is it a worthwhile sacrifice to change out the double sentinel to make that first half more manageable? Because by the end of it, you could always cope and say, hey, one more round of the first half would have gotten us there. 2 more rounds of the first half would have gotten us there. But I think you played so well with it in the second that unfortunately you're in this kind of stuck point, this kind of moot point, it feels like, Dallas, to decide. But buying much less of a map where you would see that kind of choice, right? You do see kind of more so status quo agent select. Vipers and Skies playing together. Sometimes you see a deadlock on the map as an actual sentinel. You do see Chambers as well kind of get locked in. Yorus have been very popular, and some players may want to get their Yoru in before the a leaked eventual nerfs come through. But no matter the case, I'm anticipating this map to be very much so down to the basics, where we talk a lot about how these standard maps that have been in the pool for a very long time and been in Valorant as a whole for a very long time kind of turn into these maps where good teams go to die, good teams make mistakes, and other teams can capitalize to close that gap of either skill or experience to try to etch those odds ever closer in their favor. And with the agent select in front of us, we do in fact see that Yoru, we do in fact see those Vipers, but the change is here. Teo out of Leone, an agent we've seen from them, and Waylay being that primary duelist to be the player to close the gap. This one, though, available for both teams.
Yeah, I mean, Dinks has always been a very consistent fryer when it comes around just putting on the duelist role. He's always been good for at least like 1-2, it feels like, especially, you saw what he did on Split, especially against that Waylay matchup there. Definitely feels comfortable on this agent. This is even the map where sometimes we kind of see the rain is coming through and maybe kind of the Gecko's coming back into play. Because keep in mind, we haven't seen Gecko, it feels like ages now. But all things considered, I mean, right back to the kind of tried and true here of buying. Abel being on that Yoru, though, makes a lot more sense. Yoru is one of those agents that we do see. I mean, you talk about any possible kind of leaked nerfs that are coming through. Regardless, though, Abel has been one of those kind of shining players on that character specifically, and we don't really see that kind of flex available in West Virginia. When it feels like when this team, when they have a form, when they have a way of about going and doing something, they very much stick to it, and they're very good at making sure that with their kills, their execution, they get the point made. And well, we saw that on map number 1, even when things started to kind of go astray a little bit, but they don't really have that same kind of flex potential I think a lot of these teams do. And Bind is one of those maps that Curveball could always be throwing your way because of it.
So I think the big question for me is going to be the difference, because obviously agents are the exact same bar, the Yoru and Teo kind of being swapped out for each other. The difference is going to be, Riot loves to refer to Teo as the only flushing initiator in the entire game. What can Leone bring to the table, not only as an IGL, which they already have this kind of weight on their shoulders, and we talked about how it feels like West Virginia have been slowly building up the confidence for this player in this ecosystem that they're now building around them. What can this Teo bring under Leone to this map? And as well, what can Abel do back over to an agent select that we've joked around a lot saying we would have given anything last semester for them to be taken away from that Yoru, to not be allowed to play the Yoru, because it felt like every single map was kind of being thrown out saying we had to have Abel one-trick pony this agent.
Right.
It's actually now turned into this semester, Dallas. It feels very much so. We're happy to see Abel jump back over to the Yoru. We see Abel doing well in other agents. We see Abel fragging out of their mind no matter who they play, but imagine you give them back over the prime agent that they love to pick, the prime agent that they've been very strong with. You finally hand them back the reins to go crazy. What can they do with that? And I feel like if you had a tumultuous map 1, you're now comparing the peak of Abel with Yoru in hand, and you're now comparing Leone back over. It feels like with weight on their shoulders, they've got to make all of this initiating utility count. They've got to play in while also leading and directing the team, and they have to do all of this while making sure they also survive and sustain, which has been a very plaguing problem, it feels like, for a lot of IGLs here in Division 1, especially we talk about Boise State struggling. It felt like for a long time they had a lot of cooks in the kitchen. Everyone felt capable of leading, but it felt like they took them a little bit to get under it. Utah, same exact principle, despite having a team that's been together for a very long time, right? West Virginia, Leone, back into the question, what can this player do? And I love to see Teo in a map like Bind. I hope to see a lot out of him.
I mean, that's kind of the case anytime when we see the likes of Tejo coming into play. I mean, one of those agents that, I mean, once came out initially, absolutely just ran literally everything he put his hands on. I mean, his pick rate was out of the water. I mean, it was at least 70, but seeing how things are going beyond there, it's the same thing kind of when we looked at Yoru during that last split, especially for Abel. One of those things where, I mean, we were talking about more so less complaining about Abel playing Yoru, more so complaining about seeing him the capability of being on other agents, because Yoru doesn't really fit the bill for every single map. And on Bind, it's very much fitting. It makes sense. The majority of teams like to play that agent here. The majority of teams like to kind of have that, obviously, the follow-up with the Sky, or even then running still some kind of matchup we see on Split between the Waylay and the Rays in play, but the Viper also kind of being a guarantor as well, alongside Brimstone. Yoru was one of those things where, I mean, it worked out. Seeing Abel kind of be right back in the form makes sense of one of those kind of not desperation plays, but where Stony Brook doesn't really have too much to kind of lose here now. They just have a whole lot to gain. So at that point, obviously, when they're at a stance or if their back is up against the wall saying, okay, well, if we're just going to play our own game here, try to find the kills, try to find the curveballs to be thrown out, Abel, you are the guy who can facilitate that. You are the one who can literally play the game however you want to. Just be on the site they're on whenever the time comes around. Well, so long as you're there fighting with us, you can flash how you need to, whatever the case may be. Just make sure the call is made so we're not being impacted at a deficit.
Just short of 5 months ago, Stony Brook in this exact same scenario, in playoffs, first round, and they took down the likes of Winthrop. Now struggling to take down this West Virginia side, losing out in map 1 of this series, and has a recovery game. So yes, they have so much more to gain than to lose at this point, but they still have to earn their right to gain that in the first place. And it does feel like that Yoru will help them on defense with the transition with the gate crashes, as well as apply pressure offensively with the ability to rotate to their teammates on the site they choose, with the gate crash just the same, as well as having the versatility of obviously the TPs in the map of Bind to choose which direction to ebb and flow on the attacking side. Long range engagement though between Leone and Majestic gets the first blood. Dinks finding a quick lick of their own. Abel has been, unfortunately, kind of turning the wrong way at the wrong time against the likes of Gucci, and though there was a chance for a free kill for Abel, Gucci comes in perfectly timed to close out those odds, and Stony Brook have just 2 remaining in the choice on their hands. Does Big Tonka T work it alongside Gunny to actually retake this, or do they just play for exit frags, maybe die to spike detonation? It's a pistol round. It doesn't matter too much. Like extend for 1. It's good for Gunny. Dinks though refrags. It's the kind of name of the game you're hoping to see out of West Virginia. If you sacrifice 1, give up an inch, take a mile, and Leone takes 1 more into the afterlife instead. No risk for that reward. It's West Virginia with the first round win.
Yeah, good looks there coming out from West Virginia. Obviously, just making sure to utilize those guns and the distance they play at, just to a very good, just clean tee there to kick things off, looking at that kind of B-long situation, because even if you did have a player lining up with you there, you knew that more than likely having all those weapons, having those guns in hand, having more of them, better yet, was going to at least amount to you kind of finding a trade worst-case scenario, but they never ran into that. Finding the 2-1, finding the 2-9 engagement to kind of kick things off was a good look for them, and now they're going to do that attendance check. They don't have any player watching them towards showers, but they do have a couple guys going ahead, flexing up, trying to get inside the spawn, and maybe try to squeak something together here. But Gucci, we talked about those sprays through the smoke. This guy isn't even on defense yet. He's already getting warmed up, spraying through those sky smokes inside and around that A site to find a couple successives.
Abel, though, checked in the corner here of U-Haul. Have a chance to maybe catch one off guard, but West Virginia are not phased in regard to moving into this A side. They still would like to take it. Tasmanian Tiger will confirm no one's initially on that angle. Now the guiding light more on to side. Do they sacrifice Leone? They don't. The Bulldog rips through him, and it's a 5-on-2. Around the corner, Thomas is spotted. They're no more. Stuck in U-Haul, just the last, and a quick swing, and it's all over so quickly. West Virginia come in pretty heavy-handed for this second round. Quite the expenditure, but everything paid out. It was about the best possible scenario for them. Everyone carried over a weapon, and this leaves you perfectly prepped for this third round, where anyone who did not buy out, just typically something like your Sky, or many a time it is actually your controller, can buy out and engage for this next round with either a Bucky or more to fully decide what you'll bring to the table for round 3, because it will be rifles finally falling in Stony Brook's hands, but it will not be good armor thanks to the fact they did not get any kills in round 2, and they got very little in round 1 for their troubles.
Yeah, I mean, seeing how round 2 could go for them, and I mean, obviously things working out well, effectively, they should find themselves a pretty, I'd say, fighting chance in round number 3. Get themselves a good couple kills, especially with that Bucky in hand. Even in, I mean, going ahead and popping the recall preemptively, that makes sense just in case you do die in that situation or miss that shot. But I mean, you're playing it close. You have so many Sky smokes down, giving that coverage, letting Gucci get on that side. He already has the gun guaranteed in hand, which allows the remainder of the team to kind of go ahead, stretch themselves out, and look for anything else that could be recovered, like that gun that's over in U-Haul. So it's good looks to kind of go ahead, set that line of scrimmage right here and right now, make things slow, study for the reapproach. The Outlaw still being stationed back, waiting, but even still, one player that does need to be waiting will be Gucci, still looking back towards this kind of avenue beyond this wall to see maybe if a player pushes up. And here it is, Tonka finding one, exchange comes through, still a 3v3, and so much denial on the board, just making Stony Brook's lives miserable.
Yeah, Molly confirms it. Then Spike will continue to stay untouchable, and you also have the Salvos not too far behind. Rocking the Teo and the Brimstone sets up this perfect wombo combo of denial in a post-plant scenario. They perfectly placed Gucci and Leone in a spot to watch for that hookah play. They're willing to sacrifice A77 in that regard, as that Viper, they're willing to take those chances and those risks, and it pays out in droves here for West Virginia in round 3. Now they'll have everything they would like to have, rifles in hand. 3 players that were dominating right now. They're the lonesome in every kill, in fact, for this West Virginia side. And Stony Brook are struggling, and with the 2 players saving rifles from round 3 into round 4, this is one of those moments where you have to kind of question, was that worthwhile? Is the question will ultimately come down to, is this forcing buys from every other player to kind of meet up to some regard, the same level of testament? Is this just delaying the inevitability of a eco, or are we going to see Stony Brook come out and find impact with these weapons? Thomas will be the first player forward with a gun in Octagon, but it's a barrage utility likely to come and meet them instead, as West Virginia will stay back in that courtyard.
Just seeing what, I mean, we can really get this around on the side of West Virginia. I mean, clearly going ahead and making sure they play in for this attacking side of the map with all the denial already in hand. I mean, expectedly so, making sure if you get that spike plant down, you don't have to worry much about the post plant. Just go back towards your spawn so you can kind of go ahead and throw at the wall from there. But even the Stony Brook, they're kind of going out and laying it around like this, knowing that, I mean, that round didn't go really all that well for them. A couple of players obviously dying in the process, even then holding on to whatever's remaining, because that was very much a safe scenario without the utility being present. That, well, it leaves them at least having something to play with in this. But question is, what can they do with it? Because Majestic is lined up towards this A main, this first kind of initial counter coming through with West Virginia. Well, doesn't really find anything off the back of it, but what amount to the rest? He finds a little bit of exchange there, but it stinks down back on site. We see Abel going ahead and getting that pick, and even with so many players present on the site, they want to go over towards B, knowing Thomas is a singular individual there trying to hold it down. So this should be a situation where numbers overwhelm you, right? Well, that is if we don't see Thomas go off for a 4K to find West Virginia just dusted in that situation.
And it's the perfect chance where you can show off how bad of a decision it can be to slowly trickle into the line of sight of a player that is on fire and lights out for that first blood. That leads into the second, leads into the third, or with the execution of Dinks moments prior an elbow. It's unconfirmed. You're down to 22 seconds by the time you get close to sight. Take that TP. If you're West Virginia, you don't have the time nor luxury or really utility at that point to gather the intel necessary to find out where this player is, and you pay the price for it. And the cost is a round loss and a round that Stony Brook came in with nothing, just 2 rifles they carried over, and the question was, were those rifles going to matter, or was it going to be a no-brainer? They mattered, and they ultimately paid out majorly in that regard. There's that use of the Hinder and attempts to push that player further back. They use the orbital strike. Usually it's the Hinder into a Yoru, but since they didn't bring the Yoru, they make it ultimate. Sing its presence instead. The flank coming from Majestic and Gunny. A77 is tested by it, but they'll still get away with a 1-for-1 trade as the A site, that's not up here for West Virginia. It's all be or nothing. Abel taking so much damage back a sight. Teo Salvo trying to flush some space. Leone hunting for one more, getting damaged in the process. Ultimate comes out, forcing Abel away. 11 HP in a dream, but it's just 5 for Leone in a 2 versus 2. And West Virginia having to use a ton to try to escape from here. Leone tagged by the convergent pass, barely able to moonwalk their way into elbow, and Gunny is trying to confirm some space. Gap though left. It's Gucci eviscerating Gunny, and Leone just needs to play for the perfect swing. Gucci confirms location. Abel will get cut off by Leone, and West Virginia take their 4th round win.
Another beautiful round coming through from West Virginia. I mean, great looks across the board, making sure they find themselves all the necessary kills, maybe more so on how they found that pinch there towards the end, knowing how low a couple of these players were. It wasn't Gucci who was super low on health. It was the other one. It was Leone who wasn't looking all that hot, but even still, he's the one playing the aggressive angle, oddly enough. But makes sense, still works out just fine. It depends on the kind of utility you have in play, and even then, if there's a player or two die off anybody pushing off that elbow, might as well make it the guy who should be technically dead to rights anyway. So, I mean, those calls are always 50-50, but even then still, looks like with West Virginia so far, they are at a, well, 80% win rate, at least the rounds going so far. But can they keep that spree up? We saw a massive string of rounds coming through for them during that first half of Split. Well, here on their map selection, you would hope that they can maybe carry it a little bit further.
Big Tonka T back aside, no more. Science has to continue to thrive on this objective. A second one to their name for Abel, refragging the loss of Leone, and it's a 2 versus 2. West Virginia kind of forced into this weird spot where, despite being at such an advantage, again, like we saw 2 rounds before, things are getting a little bit worse for wear. Tasmanian Tiger to go for Majestic to gather information. Gucci will throw down a molly to buy a little bit of time. Majestic will throw a guiding light out of metal, but it's a heaven take instead, and Majestic has so much potential damage from there and secures that frag off towards Gucci. Excite, last alone, has already found 2 in this round, has to make it a 4K, spots Majestic, sprays, but there's nothing at the other end. A snake bite to force them into line of sight. Perfect from Stony Brook's 2, and Majestic and Thomas will execute as required to get the 2nd round under the Stony Brook belt.
They're able to go ahead and find all the answers needed there, at least in terms of those fights that kind of start to unfold there. And that's something that Stony Brook are really going to have to rely on. Obviously, the thrifty being in his own hand, but it's, I mean, still making sure these encounters start to go their way, making sure these rounds, these games, these fights are being taken on their terms, where considering whatever guns they do have in hand, they're set up in the right angles for it. And honestly, it's big from Dinks to go ahead, find this Bucky once more. Only player on the side of West Virginia not finding a big buy in terms of the weaponry, but understandably so, being the one player who doesn't need it realistically. Dimensional Drift still in hand. You can go ahead, rush in, find the right shots, and then go ahead and just maybe get yourself a nice upgrade. We're looking for these same kind of trades, these upgrades being managed by West Virginia, utilizing that money on a round-to-round basis where sometimes it feels like curveballs, other times feels like a necessity.
Huge swing from Stony Brook. This is them trying to play into this A lobby as fast as possible. And if A77 gets kind of flanked from the rear in this capacity, this could be a great way for Stony Brook to continuously find these opening kills, continuously get that player advantage and force West Virginia to continue to hit single sites. And they're doing that now towards B. Excite gets the first blood. Now A77 hunting to maybe see if these players can be cut off and rotates back over to really take TP. It works out. A77, the only one past that point to get a kill. And the rest of West Virginia are falling and failing. And Abel is watching as Leone will tap onto this ult orb and hopes to find a little bit of value for this round, despite there not being really much available to them. One more salvo in the back pocket. It's sent. There's nothing to go off of it. Majestic in the corner just below the hookah, but not directly under window, so they'll avoid the initial confrontation of that utility. It's a high-low from Big Tonka T and Abel will not need a Big Tonka T behind them. They'll deal with it by their lonesome. It's Stony Brook. So close, but yet still so far in terms of round differential. Still one between them, the buffer. A constant question, but it's been a back-and-forth effort, it feels like, and Stony Brook have finally collected their first 2-in-a-row spree.
Yeah, I mean, we just got to see what we can really get out of Stony Brook to kind of keep this train rolling because, I mean, these fights in their terms have obviously been favorable, but even then still, West Virginia hasn't been very fast to the cut when getting onto these sites as much as you would expect out of a team kind of being facilitated by the Waylay because everybody else, keep in mind, it's not one of those things where if you don't have that stem constantly every single time being thrown down the feet of the remainder of players who aren't being obviously that Waylay, you're in a difficult situation there. There's a big disconnect present between all these players, and even then still, when those shots don't land, awkward pellets, but not final kills, again, things where these game plans just aren't working out for West Virginia. But still, in a round where they're on an eco, you're not expecting the world out of them. You're just expecting a couple kills. And while they found themselves a first and now a second, they have a lot of damage done to themselves, so they can maybe continue the trend here, maybe get a third.
Oh, Big Tonka T watching that TP as you'd expect. Molly also being prepped and waiting, and well, A77 was already down to 1 HP. It's just Leone alone, and this has been the constant force, it feels like, for West Virginia. This player has been the last one standing. A shot caller in the back line and a contester against what Stony Brook bringing to the table. Not going to matter in this one. Even 4-4. Stony Brook able to make that comeback to contend, but a lot of this has come off. That round was an eco, and West Virginia have had a little bit of trouble in their attack so far, and I think the right time for a timeout would be now. Remember, they call 2 attacking timeouts last map. They're calling their first one here, 8 rounds into this. Just a few more rounds to go in this half, but obviously they'd like to come away at least breaking even before they move over to the defending side of things.
Yeah, I mean, understandably so, West Virginia, as I talked about their execution, how well they kind of really just carry out their plans once they actually get into it. That is facilitated by the fact that they have been the only team to call these timeouts so far. It has been Sherm just at the helm of that, making sure to put the brakes on these guys whenever they start to feel like they're kind of, you know, getting out of hand and need to be reined in a little bit. And he does wait for always a good kind of instance and a good timing pertaining to each half of when to bring those out. Not too early, not exaggeratively late. I mean, just kind of more so right there towards that, you know, round number 6 to round number 10 instance. And even in more times, not just sitting there right there at number 8 to say, hey, we had the timeout. Even if there's nothing intrinsically going wrong, still go ahead and use that. But even in West Virginia, they do need that help right now. They do need to figure out what exactly is going wrong in these takes. Why aren't they looking comfortable? Why aren't they looking swift? Because you've given up 4 rounds on the side of the map where on split, you were arguably looking better by now.
It's this overall kind of, it feels like a weird dichotomy between these two teams and the back and forth nature of it, but ultimately, one of these teams has to come out the victor, and West Virginia are coming in pretty hot and heavy for this round in an attempt to do so. Dinks and Gunny in this weird kind of staring battle for a moment there. Both of them a little bit slow to the take on firing their rifle, but Dinks still comes out the victor thanks to it with the Viper spit down on A site through shorts. Feels like West Virginia are all but confirmed to have to move into this B site. There's the convergent pass. It will make contact, but that player of Able will be forced to just gate crash a little bit further backwards. Orbital strike to close out what could be an opener into the objective, but Stony Brook are just trying to buy time and ultimately fail to get West Virginia away from this site in total capacity as the ultimate comes down for A77 and the Viper spit is online for the attacking side, and it goes down just as quickly. How quick can Stony Brook unfurl into objective? Well, I'll tell you exactly how. You just witnessed it. Zero capability for West Virginia to keep them back. No ability to set up a post plant. And even though a Molly does come out, there's no stopping that defusal. Stony Brook, they just thrashed West Virginia to get through that one.
Pure aggression just seems to kind of win the game when you're looking at the likes of Vine. And I mean, when you're on the defense, what more do you have to do? Just kind of ravage over when you're looking at going for a retake. Don't play it slow and steady, especially when you know that West Virginia's been pretty slow and kind of finding themselves a bit of a post plant setup. And well, Stony Brook has been taking advantage of that. They have a little bit more flashes to play with so they can get on site. They don't have that Tejo instead. So they're opting in, instead of playing denial, playing aggression. And well, they are doing that, not perfectly, but I mean, spectacularly to say the least. Understandably so. Able being back in that role. We're seeing this guy really start to get hungry again. Not playing more of a passive role or a selection of a, you know, kind of a role that's, you know, like a sitting on the last map. And even then still, the rest of the team is also able to facilitate that. Go ahead and encourage that confidence. Say, hey, we got Tonka T pushing up towards Hookah, trying to go ahead and try something in his own right. Does get traded out in the process, but still find himself a nice little kind of bit of early damage to kick things off. Again and again and again, we see Stony Brook just really just pressuring this spawn and making sure that West Virginia have to slow down even if they do want to do something.
I talk a lot about how First Bloods can be the ultimate decider, but one of the teams we've kind of pointed that out towards was St. Clair, and we saw how they have struggled even when they get First Blood sometimes to find success after the fact, and Stony Brook are very much so hunting for First Blood control. They struggled against St. Clair with it the week before, now coming out with the woodworks and attempting to bring that aggression they felt back into West Virginia's face. It's working, but for how much longer, and will it work on the other flip side of things when it comes over to your attacking side? The defense here for Stony Brook's been clean, but offense is a different beast, and West Virginia's offense is clearly running into trouble. No player left on B side, everyone rotating in through A short. Dinks has to refrag after losing out for Excite. That Phantom is collected, but Spike is kind of still a big question mark up in the air. Decoy will go forward. They'll leave it kind of unshot in hopes maybe catch Thomas in after the fact. Leone will go for this plant as a player in heaven, but Dink still isolates, but they lose out their last remaining teammate, and now they're stuck here inside Metal, and they're not aiming in to try to deal with Majestic. Abel will just crouch walk their way in for that line of sight, and I feel like Abel has held that crouch key more in this half than they have in any other series, and it has been paying out as West Virginia's crosshair placement is always up high for the head, and Abel's able to sneak under it and always get the first jab first to get Stony Brook that kill.
I mean, seeing Stony Brook manage to find themselves at least at minimum 6. I mean, they're looking at no matter what, worst case, a tie half by now. So you got to start thinking, obviously, if you're West Virginia, winners of this series so far, and being in that situation of think about worst case, guys, how does this game continue? How do we kind of keep things alive? How do we keep the ball rolling? And well, I mean, what does this half look like if we do continue to lose? What is this defense going to start to pan into? Because no matter what, you're going to have to end up to play a lot of it and a pretty good bit of it as well, even if you do win these next 2 out. Well, I don't think West Virginia were really thinking too much of a game plan for that defense. They were hoping this attack was a little bit better. They were hoping they had the resources at hand to make sure to hit that 6-round threshold first. But it's been just so close back and forth for Stony Brook. I mean, I feel like, honestly, it's just going to be worse for wear. I'm maybe a bit of a doomsayer here, but I mean, looking at that double duelist setup, looking at the amount of flashes, we're going to see that same aggression be on Stony Brook's side. But think about how much more overwhelming it's going to be against the likes of not all 5 on a retake, but even then just 2 or 3 who are holding a side.
Speaking of that, the utility is just unfurling for West Virginia, but they have no way to clear out this back 89 stack, and thanks to it, Majestic can scrape away a kill, and even though Dinks rips through them and not able to finish the job, this buries the chances still for West Virginia. Convergent pass makes matters even worse, and it's always Stony Brook coming away the victor in these fights. An A7-7, you can see the frustration on their face, stuck into this 1v3, and the team really struggling to find impact offensively. Damage, but nothing can ever get finished. Stony Brook will always have players sustaining and surviving, and it's West Virginia now moving in. Best case scenario, 5 rounds as they enter into the next half, and worst case, they're stuck with 4, and Stony Brook will have twice their total scoreline. And with the fact that every single pistol on map 1 was won by Stony Brook, that's a precedent I don't want to really test. Even though you won the pistol here on Bind in the first half, I wouldn't want to test my luck for the second. They could very well reach double digits very early into that second half.
Yeah, that's going to be a big situation I'm going to be looking at. I mean, we're kind of seeing what we're going to get out of West Virginia in exchange, because, I mean, hitting number 7 now, so Newbrook had the guaranteed lead, but, I mean, West Virginia obviously had to answer back in a round like this. We're going to see it unfurl right in front of our very own eyes, but, I mean, talk about the next dive. What can we accomplish out of the likes of West Virginia? They go ahead, get the information. They're going to go ahead and throw that orbital barrage down, kind of guaranteeing at least 1 kill off that, not really getting the damage on another, but except for that Sky. But, I mean, Majestic still living is enough, because, I mean, keep in mind what we saw during that last round. Damage, but not enough kills to really find themselves around. So a bit of a setup is all it's going to take. I'm going to go ahead, find at least one on that elbow. We're going to see A77 continue to put this pressure here, create these distractions, make sure that Spike goes down until finally now we're in a post-win scenario. They've struggled to get here a lot. Even then, it comes down to the timing and how much they can really afford here, because obviously having a singular player inside that tube, playing more aggressively would have looked good for you, but Gunny already found the kill onto that player and the one that was trying to retreat. Now we're in the post-win scenario where we're looking at denial out of those abilities, out of that utility. Orbital strike's already being used. Do you have an incendiary for this? Do you have a lineup for this far back? And well, it's going to last for a couple seconds, but do you have the read? You have not pushed enough players up if you were Stony Brook to find this answer. Already, Gucci can find the kill there. Not another exchange being made, pushed up inside Hookah, and Leona can find that final to make sure that West Virginia don't get any more over to Stony Brook.
It's possibly the dirtiest half you could have to ask for West Virginia when it came to their attack, and a very contested final round. And the big difference maker, I think, for them was obviously having the utility to, one, get the first blood, and then obviously find a second with tons of damage afterwards. It was Majestic being dropped to about 8 HP. But a lot of it also comes to having the utility for that post plant and actually being able to functionally set up a post plant scenario. This entire composition for West Virginia was reliant on having players vacated away from sight. No wonder Stony Brook's speed, Stony Brook's aggressiveness to retake the objective ultimately was paying just in droves for them defensively. West Virginia needed players to turn around and sprint away from the objective to find success, and were willing to sacrifice everything to accomplish that task. Now, on the other end, Stony Brook offensively don't have that same sort of aggressiveness, but very much so could still pay out for these first blood affairs. It's a regrowth being used onto their Brim to get them back with a full HP after that initial swing and damage dealt against them. West Virginia have no way to get that Brim back up instead, as they're still having their Sky lap all the way back around through attacker side spawn. It feels like at this point as they're all the way off in Fountain. Gunny will set up the double dash to move off here towards U-Haul. No retract is available, so they're going to stick to this position, and the defense of West Virginia will now just need to be ready for when these players eventually do step in a line of sight and these smokes start to dissipate. Gucci around the bin. That right click doesn't kill, doesn't matter. Eventually you'll get it. The second swing by Big Tonka T, though, will shut it down. Even 4-on-4. Dink stuck in a smoke, doesn't matter. It's all Stony Brook in the feed. And West Virginia are hemorrhaging back at a distance. They will take the head off Majestic. They have to win this one against T, but they don't do so. And A77 is alone. Bandit in hand, but 3 players peeking against them. And who else but able to be holding the crouch key at any given moment? It's Stony Brook getting the 8th round win and opening up the second half.
I mean, just huge looks here from Stony Brook again. I mean, obviously coming off having the lead in that last half, you're hoping to at least get the pistol, kind of create the equilibrium on West Virginia's side, but things looking worse for wear when you kick off the second half, not getting another pistol round to play with. So that lead that you want this early on kind of definitely gone ahead and disintegrated. And seeing that Stony Brook are going to have that, I mean, they're taking a firm grasp on it. We already see the Bulldog come into play. I like the little upgrade coming into the Marshall there. It's not going to be the most useful thing on round number 3, but keep in mind, I mean, we haven't seen West Virginia really find too much of an actual play because they're going to have to be just as equally aggressive, I feel, in this defense. Because, I mean, with all the denial utility we saw, it was supposed to be set up for a post-plant scenario. That rarely, if ever, came into play. We saw 2 specific rounds that really became a hindrance for him on the side of Stony Brook. Beyond that, it just kind of felt like, all right, guys, this just isn't as effective as it could be if y'all just fought.
Marshall is being held, though, and prepped to find this first blood, and this is where Abel is just going to kind of be the player to ward off the initial first confrontation. But they're duelist. They want to be up in the front, right behind Gunny. So they'll close that gap just the same and work alongside that combo. A77, great shutdown, a second in afterwards. They're hunting for a third onto Majestic, but no shots connect. That's why Thomas also has to clean up for a second afterwards. Dinks will retract after the Marshall shots are a little bit scary. Doesn't matter. Majestic's still standing strong, and if you had found that kill Majestic's earlier through A77, that wouldn't have mattered, and likely this would be already over. It feels like in West Virginia's favor. Evil will go ahead and gate crash out of there, feels the pressure from Dinks, but does not care, and the whole team will take TP to now move over towards this A side and go for this plant where just a classic Wielding Excite has to move in. Every shot missing as well onto Thomas. Those feel like a must-hit connector. And it kind of feels like the name of the game for West Virginia right now. They're struggling in moments where these could be free kills, and we've seen them free kills, you know. And unfortunately, just really haven't been. The shots haven't been as clean as I think they have been before for this West Virginia roster that is in this playoff berth and trying to prove themselves even further.
Well, I mean, more specifically, keep in mind on this map, because they ended up winning split, and they looked very good there. I mean, a lot of their kind of clutch scenarios that started coming their way obviously had a bit of a lull there towards that mid-stage, starting off that second half. But, I mean, beyond that, I mean, they kicked off strong. They showed the capability. They know what their potential is. They know they can fulfill that. They know they can hit these rounds just really running. But it's Stony Brook who's just kind of snuffed them out, it feels like, during this map so far. Obviously, I mean, slowing down that momentum, we could have seen what that could have surpassed to during that first half. And Stony Brook just kind of won over and over and over again. I mean, you've seen these streaks before, but right here and right now, West Virginia, once again, trying to kind of hold on to things. And I think A77 has been a very strong contender, getting a lot of consistent kills. But, I mean, he's not really around at the moment. He's more so kind of providing that support, wait to see what Excite can do towards the back. And while he does go ahead and kind of hold a bit of an off angle to maybe find those 2 kills and make Stony Brook react. But that thing was just more of a feint, figuring out what's going on towards the B side, trying to figure out what players could be there without you can open the situation for A to actually kind of expose itself. And well, when they found those kills so comfortably, why the hell would anybody on West Virginia move on A side?
Well, they have to move there eventually. And oh my God, Big Tonka T is a menace. Swings in, takes a ton of damage, yes, but you get a regrowth wielder behind you. Why not send it? They'll throw a molly out and they'll go for a default plant here. Sky Smoke is down in upper side heaven, and A77 will throw a snake bite, and that does a ton of damage. And offset lens will then be vulnerable, but your players just can't connect shots. This, again, problems. These are players I'm expecting to see win 3v1s, and they're struggling in 1v1 line of sights. This is so uncharacteristic for these West Virginia players, and it feels like they're maybe stuck in a rut right now. It is still an even 2-on-2. Big Tonka T holding off towards bench. Majestic in U-Haul steps away from it and will have no problem against that engagement. Seiko will get stuck on the actual vehicle, but not going to matter too much. Guiding light up and over the top. Excite. Very bad spot to be, as the Radiant stack will be waiting to be swung by Big Tonka T, but they're sticking this right now, and there's no chance they win out that fight. Majestic up for what feels like their 25th 4K of this map, despite there only being 15 rounds in total played, but it is just a difference maker for Stony Brook. 19 kills with 5 deaths, and meanwhile, your West Virginia and your best players are struggling to make as much impact as we expect them to do.
Yeah, it's just a really bad scenario here for the likes of West Virginia. Obviously, we're seeing that kind of final countdown situation, double-digit checkpoint chokehold scenario, but I mean, I don't think we're going to really run into that. I mean, we like to mention it, and we do see it kind of come to life every here and there. But I mean, Stony Brook, I mean, an absolute spree and tear where West Virginia once again is right back onto an eco, trying to go ahead and see what kind of cheeky kills they can find, what kind of just sketchy little avenues and angles they could hold to maybe kind of manage something for a cheap price. But I mean, looking for these early picks and early dashes, you're not really going to get much off that. You find some information, know that players are extended out towards B to let you know that maybe to cue a bit of a rotation going through. But even then, that's not going to do everything. But A77 facilitating some actual results off that information being made. Marshall Kill finding one, but after the fact, Stony Brook still has 4 rifles in hand to make sure that the rest of this round could go smoothly.
Abel will be likely the first player out the gate, but also goes down, and Excite gets
Oh
two
my
for the
God.
trouble. These are finally seeing some connecting shots. We've seen Excite find these openers and get the ball rolling for their side, and the rest of the team failed to find impact afterwards. It is a shorty in hand, and it's
Oh my
over.
God.
West Virginia thrifty their way to a round win and get their 6th on the dock. It's still 4 separating between them. This is the kind of moment you have to ask for from these players. West Virginia step up to the plate, send it, and they'll get round 4 of the second half under their belt and even pick up an operator in Dinks' hands to head into round 5. And Stony Brook, it hasn't felt like many of these rounds have been a problem for them. They'll have the eco for this next one, but the ultimates won't be online, and you do actually have something there for information if you're West Virginia. But these players need to be ready to act off of it and how fast Stony Brook will play into this one. It feels like bind is not a guessing game for this offense of Stony Brook, and it all feels like a matter of time as the majority of the team, Spike included, leverage their way here towards Showers and gets information and visual off towards Gucci. But
there it is.
that scope of Dinks spots Abel, and that may just make this round very doable against Stony Brook, because Abel has been a pivotal piece of the puzzle. It's a sprinting run and gun stim boost move. Shots will connect for both sides, and it's still a 2-for-1 in favor for Stony Brook, evening this one to a 3-on-3. And West Virginia have to pray they can retake this objective. A very deep plant likely on the docket as Big Tonka T swings A77, whose crosshair is way too high for this fight. They're struggling to make impact. Dinks drops from heaven, send Big Tonka T the other way, and teleport will be made in hopes to get Stony Brook onto B side fast enough to get this plant down. And it does not seem like A77 is willing to test if that second player has made it down to site just yet.
Yeah, looking to just hold that elbow, waiting for the rest of the team to go ahead and kind of collect on site with you. But this could also be a situation where Stony Brook, if they take this fight and they end up winning this out, you see the shots there, awkward shots back towards that tunnel on the A side. So, I mean, the warm-up clearly is not in play, but Diggs with that operator, he went ahead and dropped that thing. It is not going to be in play anymore. Instead, with them go a more aggressive angle, get right in the fray, and while the rest of your team dies right behind you, you're still locked into your crosshair and want to make sure that another round comes into fruition as you find number 7.
It's a numbers first game, you had a player advantage. Even if you give up 1-for-1s every single time, there's another player to pick up the pacing afterwards, but it doesn't stop just how much that gets the heart pumping, just how close of a call it is. And it puts finally Stony Brook in a scenario where they have to eco out for the first time in this half in a real substantial way. And they'll call a timeout on top of it. Think about the ways that last round kind of failed. Obviously, the first blood from Dinks was a big eye-opener for them and will likely change up how Stony Brook will continue to move through this. Is that operator in play? Were they able to recollect that on the A side? Seriously doubt that. But West Virginia will still have that be a constant concern for Stony Brook, saying, hey, you never know what we're going to bring at any given moment. And on top of that, the transition over towards that B site and the ability for A77 to, one, have a confrontation with Big Tonka T in Meadow Hall, just on the A side exit into defender side spawn, staying alive, not focusing on re-extending for that kill. I think we're finally starting to see these West Virginia players realize they're not totally locked in. They're not winning gunfights we're used to seeing them witness. And I feel like they're finally realizing that the ego has to fall below the id, and they need to let the rest of the team step up to the plate to close the gap, even if those teammates are also struggling. It's a team game and a team effort, and that leads to not just one round win for West Virginia, but obviously a second in a row for them to kind of get that ball rolling in the second half.
Well, I think it's going to be more so kind of roping everybody in to be on the same page. I mean, we've seen Stony Brook obviously do a fantastic job of kind of spread themselves a little bit thin, maybe finding a couple kills here, a couple kills there, just making the map seemingly just easier to take wherever they do end up opting to go. But it gets to a point where it feels like those kind of tricks feel a little bit old, and it's not going to be as successful anymore, where West Virginia's going to feel a little more kind of pressured to say, hey, let's just kind of go ahead and play things out how we can. But even then more so, they could also make the call to say, hey, what exactly is going on with this dimensional drift? It's inside our hand. We could throw it on the field. We can make it thrifty work if West Virginia could do the same thing. And while they've been good for it so far in being equal in the kills, the damage has still definitely been West Virginia's hands with those guns on play.
Leone will rotate over and has a chance to grab that ult orb if they would like to, but not a big necessity. If they can flank back through short, they could shut down minion option for it. And they could be that second prong to work through showers. With the spike not having gone down just yet, A77 can confirm that first attempt was a fake. Leone will still sit inside the shower room waiting to see if anyone does contest. They're hoping Stony Brook will try to overextend to kind of pick up a kill. Tons of damage has been dealt. Only one player sitting at full HP, and that's an ultimate you'd like to have for a post-plant, if at all available. With 38 seconds still left and ticking, that's plenty of time for Stony Brook, if they wanted to take that TP over towards an opposing site. Orbital strike into heaven. No one is there, though, for West Virginia. And it's only Big Tonka T now remaining, spike in hand, and they'll make the full rotate now over towards this site where you've got a player watching and waiting and excites. They've been really good about entering and exiting those players as they approach into an objective that's usually been through B main. The question has been, and there are firefights afterwards, but with only one player left, there is no firefight afterwards. It's the next round, and West Virginia are just 2 away from closing this gap.
It really feels like inside the series, and the trend we've seen is where Stony Brook has just always found themselves a pretty slow start and just really got to get themselves on the board, kind of sitting down as they kick things off, and eventually kind of get right back up on their feet and just kind of hit the ball running. I mean, just really get going. But it's always at that point where West Virginia are really just kind of on the back of their heels, really trying to make sure these adjustments are going to play, slow the game down, put Stony Brook in a situation where they have to start to actually consider how to play the game, where it's not theirs to run anymore. So as we see it here already, once again, adjustments coming through, a lot of utility going out, and understandably so. We see the pressure being put downfield where these guys are wanting to go ahead and really push this B long, and so intensively, in fact, that understandably so, they're investing everything for it. But it makes it an easy call for West Virginia to say, hey, just hold strong, don't really move here, try not to budge if you can. And unfortunately, with so many bullets and so many players already crossing the threshold, especially the gate crash in play, then, well, you got a Viper's Pit on the field, not only for the defense, but the attacking side, making it not impossible for West Virginia to recover from this. But with the operator and A77 being the only one who can really kind of attempt that, you know, like, not impossible, but why the hell would you?
Yeah, it's just not an effort worth going through. And that's, again, one of the moments where we see Stony Brook is willing to burn literally everything. It's one of those moments where you get the over-the-top clip, and it's just, what the heck is going on here? No one that is not in the esport ecosystem of VAL would understand. And you kind of just have to say, if you're West Virginia, fall victim to the utility consumption simulator that is the current meta. Feels like in the Valorant scene, Vito not doing enough to really change that. Obviously not being played that often, but Stony Brook will burn everything early and then extend into that gap and take advantage where required to close things out. Big Tonka T will die to the spike detonation. Not a big fact. Again, it's plenty fine for him. We'd like to have them not die to it, but ultimately does not matter. It's 11 rounds for Stony Brook. They are 1 close to at least confirming overtime, and 2 from sending us on over towards map 3. And kind of seeing that collegiate special unfold before us of having the opposition go back and forth with it. And West Virginia are doing everything they can to kind of stop that, but struggling when it comes to getting Stony Brook off of that side and really sometimes keeping them away from the site when the offense really gets rolling.
I mean, obviously, just good looks here. I think honestly, a big part of it's going to be when Dinks gets that operator online. We saw it kind of have a big play, but even then, still not a huge, critical kind of core component to what West Virginia providing. Just a nice little curveball being thrown into the fray there, where more times than not, on these off rounds where it's present, he's nailing every single shot. And well, out of the first 3 to die, he's nailed the first 3 of the kills available. But of course, none of them able to kind of go ahead and shut that down. Get that spike right back into friendly hands and maybe go somewhere else, like the A site where Thomas has been waiting for the team to either make the call to go back or just kind of waiting for everybody to go back with him. And if it's a singular individual, well, you got to play this together.
Gucci is here over off towards Barrel with another player there static towards you all. That's Leone. A77 will make the rotate over just the same for West Virginia as they're anticipating an A site take instead. There's been no pressure towards Octagons. The only thing could be Hookah, and that's an easy way to vacate line of sight to not worry about it. Finally spotted on the objective. Thomas gets rid of Gucci. That's a second one to Thomas's name. You have a 1v1 on the objective and plenty of time for Able to get a kill and make their odds be ever in their favor. But you're waiting to make this 2v1 the best case scenario. You do not want to trickle into this player. This player is the definition of what a duelist can bring to the table, but A77 knows that that Rainy Night stack is most definitely not bulletproof, and they will absolutely pepper you with 7.62 to get that job done as Excite gets the defuse. West Virginia will wait for A77 to go collect that operator that Dinks would very much so greatly appreciate having back, especially when they got opener after opener after opener this round to make it even doable for them.
While you got that cannon in hand, I mean, go ahead. It's expensive, so at least kind of go ahead and let it pay for itself. You've already found a couple kills. You're looking at another round where, I mean, things are going to look a little bit interesting for Stony Brook. So if there's a time to go ahead and put the game to an equal stance, now is the time while that operator is still that curveball kind of potential where you're finding so many kills. You know you have the eco instance now where even then still the one next, you're expecting to maybe win this and carry it over again where you hopefully at least find a first where you trade yourself out worst case scenario. But Stony Brook obviously don't want to be falling for that again. We're going to see whether they want to go ahead and find themselves a big investment towards that B long section, and knowing that Dinks is not in the area, at least on our behalf, we know that West Virginia are going to have a little bit more of an awkward time holding this than they would have prior.
Ooh, double in, Gunny and Able trying to go up for the first blood. Do net it against A77. Teo will here out of Leone in an attempt to close off a lot of the gap. It does not matter. Again, they got first blood. Everything after that doesn't really matter. The ultimate will come through for Stony Brook just the same. They're getting a ton of information out of that dimensional drift in terms of back elbow haul. They even have more to come in after the fact. Dinks will go for an ultimate, hits everybody, but doesn't spot Majestic up above on Tube. Gunny somehow loses to Excite and then evens it up to a 2v2, but time is on the side of Stony Brook, and Big Tonka T leverages that back inside lane behind Tube to get one more on top. Excite and a 1v1 with Thomas. Thomas will come away the victor, in this player has been so hit or miss, it feels like, but when they show up for Stony Brook like they have in this series, like we saw in a couple of the clips leading into this series, man, oh man, they are lights out when required. And Stony Brook will now be at match point to move us possibly over in this next round to our third map of this series over towards Corrode.
Yeah, just, I mean, really looking at Stony Brook, what they've accomplished in this map so far. Majestic obviously showing up huge, 24 and 10. I mean, the guy has been an absolute train wreck and in a beautiful popcorn eating kind of way. I mean, just taking everybody down who gets on the tracks in front of them. So seeing what's happening here, I mean, facilitating a lot of this attacking side, you got to make sure to kind of see what you can do on West Virginia's side to slow it down. Issue is, on this last round we see here, technically what is map point out of Stony Brook, weapons are not in hand, man. It's been a lot of awkward buys for West Virginia, even off this past couple. Keep in mind, they had that round where they had 2 players remaining. They went ahead and had a player allocated to pick up that operator, which did them no good on a retake.
Speaking of no good, first blood no good for West Virginia. Excite overextends and hopes to capitalize, and Stony Brook have to take the TP on over to the opposing site where you had Abel ready to gate crash over to that side if required. Not going to be available. West Virginia's Leone takes down Thomas, who is sitting towards Spices, is running away from Gunny, who is applying tons of pressure, and that salvo is there to try to move players off of that spike plant. But it is a small etching battle between these two, this ebb and flow of territory contention, and they have that man advantage that West Virginia are pretty much reliant on at this point. There's a great stun out, but you're peeking into a shotgun. That's a worse way to go about it. Gunny around the bend with Big Tonka T nearby. They need to get into this gap because they want to use this orbital strike in this post plant, and now Big Tonka T alone can all but confirm it as they have to lay the orbital strike down very late, and Big Tonka T will continue to hold this angle. Now has to step over. Did they stick it to half with one of the last 2 that was there? Is Big Tonka T going to press into this one? Shots to go. A77 sticks this defuse. They'll have the time to get it thanks to that player holding on to the spike in the orbital strike. And it'll put West Virginia at double digits, though costing them literally everyone in the process of doing so.
Well, I mean, keep in mind that was a round where the buys weren't really all the best for West Virginia anyway, so still at least managing to win that was miraculous in its own right, because still they are down in the dumps when it comes around to managing a buy in this one as well. The 2700 is knocking them out enough to really find that rifle in Dinks' hand, but I mean, keep in mind, you're a waylay. You don't really care all that much. You can go ahead, buy that Bucky, get in their face, and so long as those pellets do go where you want them to, you can manage to find a kill off the back of it. We're going to see what exactly Stony Brook can do to make sure to kind of really bring this pressure on this round, because, I mean, that's the thing. They just need this finale, because West Virginia, the closer and closer they get, the more and more hungry they are going to be for that win. So going 1-for-1 on the Buckies, already going ahead, getting exchanged there, not in terms of only the weapons, but the exchanges as well in terms of the kind of roles being presented, because West Virginia, we're going to need that Brimstone for that retake. They were going to really appreciate it. Issue is, smokes were already expunged. We already see the Yoru utility being expended as well. It is again and again where West Virginia, honestly, funny enough, are kind of coming out a little bit on top. And with Dinks having that gun in hand and A77 present on site, they are just swarming this last remaining player, Thomas, to find that kill and carry 4 into the next. This is a possible OT we're looking at here, funny enough.
It feels like a doomed effort. It feels like overtime is a guarantee, but anything can happen, especially with Stony Brook's offense, the way that they take pacing to the next level. And there's so many chances in that round where players tucked in behind a corner, West Virginia maybe missing an opportunity, players with room to capitalize on these kills, on these exits and entries into the site. It's so close every single time, and it's really thankful to these first bloods that go back and forth and get traded instantly, that West Virginia even has the chances to go at it. Stony Brook has been so good about getting onto site and getting these spikes down. It's just the question of, is their post plan where they want it to be? And if they're denied it, what's left? I feel like we saw the gaps of that 2 rounds before with them incapable of getting back into attacker spawn in a lobby, and we kind of saw in that last round just the same. It's 3 players fighting down B-Long. They want this ult orb. They want to get it online, and with that confirmation, that's now an orbital strike available for West Virginia's defense that they can use to ward away from the objective, and very much so use as a possible opener with that Dinks combo of the hinder into the orbital strike if they can find the gap capable to do it. It's A77 though pressuring. Bear in mind they have an ultimate. They have a Viper's Pit, and they chose not to use it, but they get a first blood, and now with Gucci getting visual, it feels like this would be the time for it to use that ult. They want to get it out early, and they do as Excite watches the cover and gets a second, and Hookah just the same. Exit onto site, why don't you, he asks, but Abel does exactly that. Stunned away now as the Teo salvos try to buy some extra time. 45 seconds left and ticking. They will not be warded away from this B side at the time being. Abel will be dealt with by Gucci, still tucked inside of 2. Majestic spraying in hopes to catch them, but it's just a spike in hand. 30 seconds left and ticking. There's really no way to buy a ticket on a site for free, and you may not even be able to rotate in time at this pace and get onto A site for a spike plant if you don't start to pick up that pace and fast. As Dinks is watching now on site, tucked into U-Haul. Majestic making tons of noise as the footsteps work their way through that short lane onto site. Double dash ready by Dinks. Hinder as well. They escape. You'll have to stick this, but do you have the time? You'll be pressured from the same exact lane at U-Haul, and you'll be dealt with just like the rest.
Goodness.
It's OT confirmed on map 2.
I mean, if there's a chance for a second breath here, I mean,
Overtime.
this is the point to do it for West Virginia. Obviously, just fighting tooth and nail to even get to this point in the first place. But I mean, it feels like, once again, I mean, that entire second half was once again just worse for wear for them. Even then, not really managing to get all the rounds necessary to have a lead in the first when we looked at those kind of big denials. So it comes down to West Virginia on the secondary half, knowing they're never going to be in an eco situation now. So, I mean, kind of a silver lining there for them. But beyond that, are they going to find these rounds that kind of really look good? Are we going to see a definitive back-to-back out of them? And I feel like the answer is no. These rounds have been so kind of sketchy once we kind of really get down towards the end of it, where, I mean, these coin tosses, you could close your eyes and cover your ears, and still you'd be just as kind of, well, informed of what could happen around compared to somebody who's been watching the entire
Do
time.
anything.
Bear in mind, if Stony Brook lose out in OT here, they're done. That's it for Division
Right.
1 for them this entire semester, this entire year. They'll have to play
Tony knows
into the
that.
next splits. It's a lot of weight on their shoulders. But Big Tonka T has been sending just absolute heater after heater in the direction of West Virginia, both in the first half and here in the second. But well, they were able to strike for first blood in this round in the first set of OT. Can they continue to hold on to this angle? And is West Virginia going to either vacate this A side or, sorry, this B side and run day? Will they go for the hit? There'll be a ton of damage off towards Big Tonka T. A second swing by Gucci will confirm off to their twin. Now you've got the objective. Can you set up for this post lane without losing any more players in the process? Leone will use the drone to find a little bit of information, maybe in towards that elbow, and ward Thomas back for as long as they possibly can. And with Spike going down, West Virginia have now solidified themselves. A double swing.
Nobody's
Don't line up
watching, eh?
exactly. Please don't give it over to Thomas, but Leone does exactly that. 2 for their trouble now as they work through that outer hall. 3 players dashing now onto site, all direct. Everyone through the sky smoke. Bar 1 and Abel is now alone. Everyone dealt with by A77, and with the flight from Leone, it's done for West Virginia in this round. They'll get the first set of OT, and they even had Gucci way back waiting for the Molotov toss. That felt like West Virginia set their win condition, and Stony were forced to walk into it.
Uh-oh, just not really good looks here for Stony Brook. Consider, I mean, obviously this defensive side for West Virginia wasn't all that strong. It took them a really long while to kind of get the ball rolling, but even then still, they managed to do it. These were all the ways to really sketchy rounds, but this is where West Virginia had these thrifties. This is where they were always managing to try to find and buy to a degree, but instead, on a round like this, you see the full rifles kind of come into play. It's going to be a stage where eventually we saw the operator come into play huge for Dinks on that B site, but he held it on and then brought it in over to A on the round following and just didn't really get anything off the back of it. Well, at least finds his own to kind of kick things off for here on the A side on round number 26, trying to see whether or not you can see another player maybe extend themselves. Leone being the one who does that, ends up dying in the process, but you got plenty of dashes, you got plenty of time to recall, but you don't get the time to really do any of it. A singular player still on side of the Gucci, and well, we talked about what this guy could do on the A side, especially back towards main around that U-Haul. He's not there though. He's present on the side. He wants you to put that spike down so he can execute the last.
And he's just teasing in and out of that stem, just making sure they can keep it online. 1 player off towards Showers, 1 direct on site and default. Gucci will be spotted by Gunny and will be just eviscerated as Thomas will swing out A77 from inside U-Haul. Excite
have
though,
no clue about the
flanking.
flank.
I don't think they know at all. Will they make the audio cue very audible as they drop down from this position? I don't think that will be the case. Will Thomas try to escape back towards Shower? This going to be a very long con play as Excite edges closer and closer, now stacked over towards the orange boxes. Excite swinging just by the inside of this Rainy Night stack. Doesn't want to give anything towards Showers. Sees the player, could spray through it if required. Gunny wants this swing. They'll get it. And Excite's plenty happy for it. And Excite sends West Virginia out of overtime and sends Stony Brook packing home.
What a round coming through from Excite there. I mean, even him, I can tell nerves probably just bouncing everywhere. But seeing how things are going, I mean, a very, very well-deserved win, considering the kind of, like I said, really detrimental second half it looked like for them. I mean, kind of had to get things going, but even then, every time they found a win, it felt like it was by such a narrow margin. We never felt confidence from them. And even going into that OT, things I was kind of, you know, maybe looking shaky, but one good opportunity brought, one good clutch after the fact, and well, at the perfect timing, especially in an OT scenario, knowing you already awarded yourself that bit of a safety net for that number 1 and setting things up to close thing out. thankfully, they're not going into map number 3. That's all I got to say. I mean, as things were kind of happening for them, I don't think they wanted to do that, seeing how things were playing and knowing that, I mean, even then, that they just kind of seemed to go a little slower and slower and slower. I doubt the game plan was going to be as nearly fleshed out, but still managed to win. And unfortunately for Stony Brook, this season and this match has just not been enough to really kind of, give the credit where it's due to this team and what they've accomplished.
They managed to get Winthrop last split right in playoffs to start that first round. Now they're facing West Virginia, who were hyping up as the dark horse last time if they got knocked out by the eventual grand finalist appearance team of St. Clair in their side of the bracket. But this feels like a new beast out of West Virginia, though they have a very large beast kind of salivating in front of them as the #1 team and the reigning grand finalists. They helped to get through in round 2 coming up next weekend. But my goodness, West Virginia exit out of this weekend very happy with where they are. And I'm going to say it like you were mentioning, if a third map was on the docket, if Stony Brook did pull out map 2 unbind, their opposition's map pick for that collegiate special of winning your, losing your map pick and winning your opposition's, right? I think Stony Brook would have taken it. I have to 100% get the nod. Not only were Stony Brook looking better and playing better the longer the series went on, West Virginia has been so historically hit or miss for that map on Corrode. They started last semester with one of the worst performances we've seen on that map. They ended up turning it into one of their best maps, and we were like, this is so good to see West Virginia improving this map. They looked really great on it. They enter into this split. They're back over to this kind of weird gameplay where they didn't work out for them. They lost a series because they went to that map. Now it's the big question. We don't know what their Corrode would look like, but you bring out a better Stony Brook that's been improving, and it really is up in the air, and I would have to give that nod to that side, especially with the way that Majestic and Abel were just lights out in that second map. It just felt like a doomed endeavor that required West Virginia to come up. But when it was needed, Dallas, heroes swung and heroes found targets, and heroes come away with one big hero at the end there out of Excite to get that map under their belt.
Yeah, I mean, Excite obviously coming through for the entirety of the series. I mean, what I feel like Dinks, obviously, when it came around to map number 1, Excite having that operator play, kind of that curveball being thrown in every now and again on the defense was kind of a big thing. Just go ahead and get the momentum, maybe swinging back into their favor when we saw that spring coming out from the likes of Stony Brook. But even then still, I mean, it felt like Stony Brook once again, when we saw that kind of 12 threshold, it felt like, again, seeing Abel back on that Yoru, seeing all these components come together for Stony Brook to kind of just play that chaotic, press the W key and just win out these fights. Just be confident. That's literally the game here. Just kind of turn off your comms. I don't care what it takes. Blast your music as loud as humanly possible and just get in there. And it seems to usually work out for them, but it feels like once they finally get to a point when they have to be on a site, when they have to really hold things down, when they're not pressing that W key and more so waiting for West Virginia's inevitable plan to come through, it's still by such a narrow margin that, I mean, regardless, it's going to look good on their end.
Yeah, and I kind of think the unsung hero of that round as well was Gucci, kind of sitting in, had a really tough game. Let's be honest, it was not a great second map out of Gucci up to that point. Constant 1-for-1s, if they even could get that. A77 was running into the same problem when they were getting into 1v1s. Crosshair placement wasn't perfect. That led to Stony Brook usually killing away the victor in those, or A77 being forced to kind of run away, tail tuck between their legs for another moment and a second chance opportunity that more times than not kind of fell through in Stony Brook's favor nonetheless. But Gucci came alive, swung in. They had player lead thanks to Dinks. Things kind of go awry. They weren't able to retract like you had mentioned because they didn't have the dashes available. They weren't able to escape from that cubby. You have then Gucci stuck on site. 4 players pressing against you against your 3. They find 2. They stay within a stim. Yes, they lose out to the opposing waylay inside showers, but them not getting those 2 kills on site, them not being the distraction between the 2 stacks, between U-Haul and their 89 stack, would have absolutely thrown that round in Stony Brook's favor and let that OT continue. But you have heroes who are required, and they step up and, like we said many a time, swing. But with that being said, we're going to jump on over to an interview after this quick break. One of the players here on the side of West Virginia kind of poke into their minds and see what they're thinking heading on into their next series against that #1 team. And with that being said, we're going to take a break before then. Don't go anywhere. More to come.
Stony Brook University is a place for daring. Daring to see where you can go when you follow your heart. Even when it leads outside your comfort zone. Daring to ask bigger questions. Who will I be? Where will I thrive? What is my legacy? At Stony Brook University, we dare to find answers to these questions every day. In the classroom, in the field, on the water. Even in the spark of a spontaneous moment. Daring to define your own path is not always easy, but it is always worth it. At Stony Brook, New York's flagship university, we are united by one simple truth: to be something more in this world. Start with daring to be true to yourself. Stony Brook University. Dare to be.
Hi, we're WVU. You probably know us for screaming. And yeah, we're pretty good at it. But here, it's more than a chant. It's our celebration of innovation.
Let's go.
Our rallying cry for community.
Let's go!
And honestly, it's just our way of life. So whether you're chasing big dreams or just chasing sunsets,
Let's go!
01, go pick your type. Don't think, just fall in line. What's the point of living life if it ain't even mine? All the best things I know sit in the void. It makes me wanna scream that I'm something else. I don't care who I'm meant to be, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happened.
We're here with the hero themselves, looking quite spiffy this March for St. Paddy's Day, it seems. But it is Excite, the victor of that final round, and the hero that sung those final 2 kills to secure it. How you feeling after that victory?
Feeling good, you know. It was a little too close for comfort, but thankfully we closed it out. You know, I was confident going into map 3 regardless, but you know, we're on break. We want to go do stuff with our day, so closing it out at 2-0 is a lot better for our time.
There you go. Time management. This is something you learn in college. They always talk about it. Now you're getting it here on the esports side of things. I'll touch a little bit. You said you were confident going into map 3. That was actually a big talking point for us ending map 2. How confident were y'all in 3? Because y'all have been this really hit or miss team when it comes to Corrode. You obviously improved leaps and bounds of it after your start last split, but you started this split in a rocky way, losing out that map pretty decisively, and it kind of brought the question again, how good are West Virginia on this map? And obviously, Stony Brook was just getting better as time went on. How ready were y'all for that 3rd map, all things being said, with all those contributing factors?
I mean, me personally, Corrode's like one of my favorite maps, and especially the character that I get to play on it. I'm just like extreme confidence. So I think like our team in general, we've been getting a lot better with Corrode. Just want to say we're good at every map, but our Corrode has been looking nice. So I'm definitely feeling super confident in that map for sure.
Rightfully so. I mean, confidence was key for a lot of this game, would feel like. Because, I mean, every single time it felt like you guys had a pretty strong start to each of these maps, but then fell into a lull kind of in those mid stages of the rounds, where whether it be the latter half of the first half or whether it be kind of running into that second half where things just aren't really going too well. What did that kind of feel like today? Did it feel like it wore y'all down a little bit, kind of made the game draw out longer than it needed to, or did it feel like just too many things were going wrong and y'all were just waiting for that spark of something to go right?
I do feel like actually a lot of things were going right, as much as it might not have seemed like that because it was a really close game. But we just need to close out the rounds we're supposed to be winning, and that's kind of where like the game got a lot closer. Is we would do something really good in like the early stage of the round, and then the mid round to late round would kind of fall apart. So we just got to make sure we're cleaning up the end stage of that, and especially against better teams, like that's where it really matters. So once we can clean that up, I'm sure we could beat any team, like 100%.
I'm going to try to throw a bone here to the social media team here for Division 1. You talked about being prepared for even better teams if you just play your game and play at your best. You have arguably the best team in collegiate history for the side of Valorant still in front of you. On your side of the bracket, it's Maryville. You do not have to worry about Winthrop. You don't have to worry about St. Clair. It's just this target in front of you, the last grand final team. How ready is West Virginia? How ready are you guys individually and you yourself as a whole for what is to come next weekend against the #1 team, not just here in Division 1, but possibly all of collegiate?
I think we're super confident. I mean, we already took them to like a 3-map, like really nail biter series. And I think if I'm wrong, like we're the only team to take a map off of them. So like we're definitely like the closest one to compete with them compared to like all the other teams. So I think like as long as we, like I said earlier, fix our little mistakes and close out these rounds, we'll be able to like wipe the floor with them.
We really got to start scripting these questions because that's exactly what I had. And now I'm just like at a miss. But in that case, anyways, I do have a little bit of a backup because there is a chance, obviously, next week going into playoffs. We don't have an interview with Stony Brook today because, well, they didn't end up kind of carrying on. And I mean, I don't want to doomsay or speak anything bad over y'all, but just in case for next week, I do want to at least get that status report right now because it's been a very heavy hitting topic of the course of the split in terms of Leone being y'all's IGL. So we talked to him at the very first, map, or better yet, stage that we had going into week one. And he said he was ready. He's feeling enthusiastic. He was feeling confident about it. How do you feel like he's kind of fit into that role over the long term of this semester and going forward for what could be the next entire calendar year of Division One if y'all come back?
Yeah, he's very young. He's the youngest player on our team. He's 19. So with that comes with a lot of like passion. He's got a great mentality for like being an IGL. That's why I think it's perfect that we put him on that role, because he's not like a tilter, gets upset. He's like, I don't think I've ever heard him like get mad, to be honest with you. So he kind of fits the bill for an IGL role perfectly. And I think as time goes on and he gets older and he gets more experience, he'll definitely like really sit into that role and kind of be like a top IGL in collegiate.
Okay, great to hear.
Confidence, that's what they have behind him, and it's a great program and a great set of teammates to continue to leverage him and take advantage of what the future really holds here. And that is unfortunately also kind of the state of the game when it comes to collegiate. You have to bow some players out, and sometimes you get to bow new players in that fill that role quite well, and I feel like Leone has done that from the outside looking in. But with that being said, give you a chance here to shine, excite, shout out anywhere you're thankful for, teammates, family, loved ones. I don't know, a leprechaun somewhere you seem to be fitting the bill. Maybe you just give him his clothes back at some point. But I'll give you a chance to do so now.
Yeah, I'll shout out my teammates, of course. I mean, they're with me every day practicing in and out of the server, so it's definitely fun. But also my parents, I know they're watching downstairs right now actually because I'm home for break. So shout out my parents, love you guys. Also my friend from the West Virginia Rocket League team here's too, spending time with me over break. So shout out the boys, shout out the parents.
All right, well, everyone's getting a shout out. Well, I'm going to let you go celebrate with the family and with your friend over on the Rocket League side of things. Maybe pick a better esport than Rocket League to go play to celebrate with him, but it is what it is. With that being said, though, that is we're so thankful to have you here. Excited. Congratulations on y'all's victory, and we're looking forward to see how that Maryville games with you guys.
Have a good night, guys. Appreciate it.
You too. Thank you.
Dallas, what a series on our hands, right? That was crazy. And with Maryville in the future still to come, that may not even be a big question. It may not be up in the air. Excite had confidence. The team had confidence they could come away the victor of that one. And with history being a close call in a 3-map series, who's to say it can't happen?
That's the big kicker there. I mean, obviously, I feel like West Virginia has a bit of their own kind of lock picking capability for that big, massive gate that is Maryville at the moment. But issue is, I mean, that's going to be the big kicker here for Maryville, is that they did obviously get his first week off, so they got to kind of watch a bit of the flaws that came through from West Virginia here today. But even then, beyond that, when you talk about that team, when how high sitting they are in terms of the kind of the hierarchy that is Division One, at least specifically pertaining to us, it feels like they don't really have very many other pressure or pain points to worry about, especially when you're looking at obviously the 2-0 over Winthrop. So it feels like kind of everybody's untouchable to comparative to them. And I'm sure that's the mentality they're going to be keeping. So if there's anything that they ever do have to practice, like obviously if you take a lot more from losses than you do from wins, West Virginia doing that without actually taking the series away from them could be worse than just losing out 2-0. So there's a lot of big things here that can really kind of kick into high gear for Maryville, but obviously West Virginia, and an unfortunate part of them also being on break this week. I don't know if they're going to be really hounding on that practice as much, and rightfully so. You know, got to make sure to maintain all your responsibilities, manage your time, and well, with them being on break, I don't think they're really going to try to actually break these guys during this week.
It's going to be a big question. I think this is a team that you face off against that you kind of have to practice every day to prep for. Right. But there's plenty of unknowns still about Maryville. And there's plenty of unknowns about who we're going to be seeing, what all we're going to be seeing, and how it's all going to break down. But with that being said, they'll have to see for West Virginia Maryville in next weekend. As terms for this weekend, there still is another series to come. And I'll pose a question here for the audience out there. How'd your pick'ems go? Did you feel happy with the result at the end of our first series? If not, well, there's still a second one to come. Get your pick'ems in. If you don't know what we're talking about, over on the Division One website, there are pick'ems free to enter. You can take your your luck and roll the odds, so to say, for high or low on numbers, on kills, on round differentials. And you can do that for this next series coming up next, Boise State versus St. Clair. But with that being said, we'll give you time to do that because it's a break between the first series and the second. My name is Infinite Strange here by Mick. We'll be back for the second one. We look forward to seeing you. Stay tuned.
Stony Brook University is a place for daring. Daring to see where you can go when you follow your heart. Even when it leads outside your comfort zone. Daring to ask bigger questions. Who will I be? Where will I thrive? What is my legacy? At Stony Brook University, we dare to find answers to these questions every day. In the classroom, in the field, on the water. Even in the spark of a spontaneous moment. Daring to define your own path is not always easy, but it is always worth it. At Stony Brook, New York's flagship university, we are united by one simple truth: to be something more in this world. Start with daring to be true to yourself. Stony Brook University. Dare to be.
Hi, we're WVU. You probably know us for screaming. And yeah, we're pretty good at it. But here, it's more than a chant. It's our celebration of innovation.
Let's go.
Our rallying cry for community.
Let's go!
And honestly, it's just our way of life. So whether you're chasing big dreams or just chasing sunsets,
Let's go!
People don't let the talk, only the text. Many times they give up on each other, go next. Fear being cast out, not that complex. We only need to realize and need embody respect for us and not build a barrier around ourselves. Same ideology for writing many tracks. Give one point that would say otherwise. It's only in a discipline and not a bigger price. So when I touch you, you cry on my shoulder. This might be the biggest showdown in myself. Not trying to pour ya, but all these ideas in my head are getting me to falter. You sending me a big paragraph saying comments I made when I left home red fair and square. Yeah, I guess I'm alright now. Drenching my mind in the alcohol and everything is blessed.
All my energy is played with my time and the energy. If you don't like the way I think, don't need to be the love of me. Try to fix my mind and the habits should be using me. All in the way I say, 'cause I know that you embellish me. Tripping on my love, but I don't feel the same way. I'm sorry, baby, go ahead and kill me. You ripped out all the segments of my soul, 'cause you need me. With that, I'm still here distracted by the same thing.
My shoulder, this might be the biggest showdown in myself. Not trying to pour ya, but all these ideas in my head are getting me to falter. You sending me a big paragraph saying comments I made when I left home red fair and square. Yeah, I guess I'm alright now. Drenching my mind in the alcohol and everything is blessed. Why does it always seem like I'm moving backwards? Caught up in a dream, everybody's actors. Why does it always seem like people change faces and nothing is real? Oh yeah. And you know I've seen better days. Yeah, you know I've been through some things. Yeah, I've been sending prayers through the roof. Oh, truth. Yeah. Don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I've been so patient with you, don't you know? I've been so down with you, and you know it. You never come around, and I show it. Just give me one chance right now, and I won't blow it. I won't blow it. Oh. And you know I've seen better days. Yeah, you know I've been through some things. Yeah, I've been sending prayers through the roof. Oh, truth. Yeah. Don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on you. Yeah, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, I've been waiting on your call. Been waiting on your call right now. I wanna hear your voice somehow. Yeah. I've been waiting on your call. Oh.
Hey,
Let's get connected.
connected. Let me be the calm when it get hectic. Let me be the one knowing you left it. Connected. Let's just hit the plug and get connected. Feel it through your body, don't hurt my electric.
If you feel the way I do, go make your move. 'Cause I need you to help me for the night. So feel the way I do, go make your move. 'Cause I need
undress you with my eyes and you bless me. I confess my love and affection. I'm blinded by all the imperfection. Recognize the dark in you perfection. Can't wait to make you my selection. One side, let's get connected. West side, let's get connected. East side, let's get connected. South side, let's get connected. Worldwide, let's get connected. Local side, let's get connected. Online, let's disconnect it. Offline, let's get connected.
Let's get connected.
human? Am I alone? Do I belong here? They paint the world in black and white, it's confusing. I wanna let them know that I'm something else. I don't care what you say of me, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between pick your type. Don't think, just fall in line. What's the point of living life if it ain't even mine? All the best things I know sit in the void, and makes me wanna scream that I'm something else. I don't care who I'm meant to be, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between
What is your favorite song right now?
My favorite song is The Days Notion
Do
remix.
you think about the days when
Mary will make sure Giza knocks him down.
we sit the other way?
And for Winthrop, who else but Governor?
Swing now, come on, chill with me. I got your favorite show.
St. Clair, Pillow!
We don't have to watch that now.
West Virginia just runs by.
Wake up, then we can wake up.
Majestic's there for Stony Brook.
It's too much. You just need to wake up, then we can wake up.
Boise State University takes this year.
Then think about it. Too much, too much. Then think about it. Too much, too much.
Know your history and be doomed to repeat it. And if you're St. Clair, you may want to forget your history because you would like to repeat what you brought to the table last playoffs in our prior split into the grand finals. But to get there, you had to go through quite the trial and set of tribulations. One of those against West Virginia. But now this time as that third seed, you're kind of being dropped down a little bit further. You're going to have to deal with Boise
Right.
State first on the docket. It's St. Clair facing off against Boise State. Can St. Clair once again make their presence known in the grand finals? We'll have to see if they can get through Boise State first.
Yeah, big selections coming through here. I mean, obviously, Boise, one of those teams where it feel like they didn't really have much to kind of work with over the course of the regular season, whether it be last split or this one, but still managed to find themselves just by a thin margin getting inside that playoffs. But I mean, I went ahead and gave them credit where credit is due. Once it gets around to the point of actually getting into playoffs, once they really start kind of bringing that heat, once they understand that there is a bracket in front of them instead of a Swiss stage, they kind of obviously want to step up the gears just a little bit to make sure they can kind of go ahead and at least contend with these kind of top hitters, knowing that they're going to be back to back to back to back. So it makes it a fun little kind of boss rush for them, essentially, where hopefully they can be able to at least kind of make things interesting.
Let's go and take a look at our higher seeded teams roster first. We'll make that molly going left to right. We'll go and jump on over to St. Clair to see who they're bringing to the table. It's kind of been a highly controversial topic of choice has been this roster throughout this semester. It has felt like they've been almost And the way we've kind of described it is close to the edge of being on fraud watch, right? They didn't look as good as they did in playoffs, but also last split, the playoff St. Clair looked like a completely different team than the actual play in St. Clair. So that's nothing new, but we have to see that same play of St. Clair we saw last split come alive here for this playoff just the same, and they have to do that with a slightly different roster. Woody has stepped into this team alongside JP, so they're back together as a tandem duo, as a teammates, I should say. You still have Tillo there. You still have Seth back in now, no longer just a coaching role, but now actually in playing for this roster.
Right.
So there's been some changes, and they're still getting used to those changes, and it feels like maybe they're still trying to find the perfect way to go about that. And if they deserve their third place seeding spot, they got there, they kind of feels like they needed it to get another match out under their belt to then go up against what would be the second seeded team in the bottom side of the bracket, that being Winthrop.
Yeah, and I mean, even then, once again, St. Clair barely managed to kind of squeak out ahead and get themselves in that kind of three-way tie at the upper echelon end of it. So seeing them up against Boise State going to be a good stance for them to kind of go ahead. Maybe if they do have a bit more kind of rocky of a start when it comes around to playoffs as well, understanding the bracket does kind of create a little bit of shakiness inside of people. It could also instill that same kind of confidence where we see St. Clair's absolutely stand their ground. And I mean, this is the same exact kind of situation so long as we don't actually see the kind of map selections or anything kind of going a particular way. This is a team that we kind of hyped when it came around to Breeze, but everything else was a little bit questionable still on our end. And with Kuro kind of being a very hot topic here, and even more so just not having those 3 site maps available nearly as much without just Haven being the only thing there, they always have a nice kind of cornerstone to run to when things start to go into trouble. But the issue is beyond that, it always feels like a big question mark above their heads of whether or not we actually kind of get the formula running.
Yeah, the big question for us in our prior series, in case you missed it, that was that Stony Brook versing off against West Virginia game. The West Virginia managed to eke out a second map victory in that series 2-0, struggling in their own map pick and actually requiring overtime. So one of the big story points for that one came down to kind of individual heroes stepping up in big rounds, finding big clutch moments. Majestic that for Stony Brook, multiple 4Ks. I felt like they had 6 by the time we entered into round 12 into that second half, right? They were so good for their team. That isn't what you can rely on, though. And even with that, they lost out on that second map. And it feels like you always have the capability to have every player in St. Clair do that. Even if you see Seth, typically bottom of the leaderboard for this team, trying to lead in with utility, trying to be a big driving factor in the role that they're in, whatever map that is, so they can fit into any system. You do know that they have the capability to step up, to have really big moments and shine. And we've seen a couple glimpses of that. They had 12 kills in one series. 6 of those were first kills when they were playing a double duelist selection. And that kind of opened things up for St. Clair. They ended up barely, I believe, eking out that victory for that map. But it was like this weird moment where the second highest, or technically the tied for most first kills on the other team, who also had 6, had 24, right? So it's this big difference. You were opening things up really well for Seth, but this isn't your primary position. You don't usually play that duelist. So how are you going to fill in on other maps, and how are you going to find just as much value in that regard, especially for a team that we've highlighted so many times, Dallas, loves to fight for those first bloods. And if you're looking at teams that love to fight for first bloods, we saw Stony Brook try it. We also know Boise State like to do it as well. And the roster that likes to do it, well, they're also nearing the point, Dallas, where they may be retiring out of the collegiate space and graduating out.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of highlighting players, you and I haven't really gotten to highlight Boise State too much, considering that you and I are always on that designated Sunday. Meanwhile, Ancient Angel and Orbital are always on that designated, Monday. So as things really go here, a bit of a swap up here for the playoff stage and seeing how things are going. We get to go right back to Boise State as you and I were able to kind of see their first week of the Swiss stage. But beyond that, we haven't really got to see much more. But I mean, it feels like the story across the board, look at the numbers, seeing how things are kind of going, doing the research for this. They still have that capability. I mean, seeing what they started off for the season, they had a great, strong offense. And I mean, that always kind of obviously comes through. But even then, their defense seems that they kind of, finally got to a point where, hey, we should look at the opposite end of the spectrum. We should really start to analyze both sides of the field, get a little more consistent. While we're strong on one side, it feels like we're kind of weak in the other. And it just, Popeye is only as good as whenever spinach works on both arms. I don't think the show would have really aired just as well if he only had one strong arm there. So seeing how things are going, I mean, I think they're definitely improving in every attribute. I think the margin of scores and how things have been going for them over the course of the season, while maps have been closer, while scores have been, by a more narrow margin, while they've been staying a little more relevant, which kind of puts them ahead against Ohio State and Utah even more so than we saw prior, because that was a whole debacle. We genuinely didn't know which one of those two teams between them and Ohio State would be going. They more definitively put themselves in the lead this time around to say, hey, we're better than what we were. and we deserve to be here even more so than last time. But can they make sure to stick to their guns and, you know, really make that drive, make that last a little bit longer actually in the playoff stage?
I think that's a big talking point for this Boise State side, right? Comparatively, when we talked about our third, fourth, and fifth place seeded teams, you know, Stony Brook, West Virginia, you know, St. Clair, we talked about they don't look as good as they did in the prior split, and that was many changes. Obviously, they were going through 1 or 2 new players each time, and I felt like maybe that was the reasoning for it. But then you had teams that were still mostly static, Utah and Boise State. They looked leaps and bounds more improved than they did the prior split. These rosters, if they faced themselves in the split before, would beat them like 13-3, 13-2, it feels like, on every map, not just their normal map like Boise State loves Abyss, right? It would not even be the scenario. They could do it on any map, even when they don't really know. So you're now comparing that and what that means for Boise State to step in and say, hey, we're doing unbelievably better. And St. Clair have a whole lot to prove. Now your history will be due to repeat it. They would like to forget history, it seems like, and, you know, forget how to read and don't read the history books to, you know, pull off what they did the prior split. But they're not as good as it looks like just yet on paper as to what they were in that playoff stage. So they have a really high margin to meet. But if they don't, that makes the possibility of Boise State coming away with this victory that much more possible. Ancient Angel posed the question for us over on Toper. If you haven't seen it, check it out. Are Boise State just happy to be here in playoffs, or are they a genuine competing team? And I think it's the latter. I think they are absolutely 100% capable of stepping into this playoff series. They deserve their shot over Utah and Ohio State, even though Ohio State and Utah looked so much better than the prior split. They still beat them, and now they have the chance to do it again and take down another big opponent, this one being St. Clair, who, if there was the time to shine, Dallas, it would be now, and it has to be now for this season of Division I.
Yeah, well, if we can go ahead and take a little quick pick at the map selection, that could go ahead and tell us whether or not they can actually compete here, because you went ahead and mentioned the Abyss, that being a specialist pick for the side of Boise State, and we talked about how much of a stomp it is for any team that meets St. Clair on Breeze, and rightfully so, those are your first 2 bands right in front of us. A very easy selection, very clearly outliers for almost anybody. So if you're doing any research at home, well, obviously the IGL's got just kind of a much easier pick to kind of work with there. But with Haven, Split, Caro being the lineup there, we're kicking it off on Haven. We talk about those 3 site maps for St. Clair, these things that they absolutely love. Even when Lotus was in the rotation during that last semester, we saw them want to go ahead and really put the bar down and make sure to play as Lotus as much as humanly possible. Once that went ahead and rotated out, even though it's coming back in, right now for the moment, Haven has to be your home.
Well, St. Clair have opted to go back over towards a double duelist selection, so maybe, just maybe, we'll see the same thing of that opening kill be the driving factor for success for them, but it's more important to come over on the defensive side of things, sorry, the offensive side of things, but they're starting off on the defensive side of things, so Seth can play really far deep down these like A-long angles. You could have your Yoru go through short, you could poke and prod and force players into spots you wouldn't expect them. All of these things can come together and really kind of change the economy and kind of change the overall state of it, but Boise State will avoid the majority of that when it came towards A, though they do lose out on one to the shot of instinct with that Sheriff, and instead dive onto the B site to go for a plant before continuing to rush onto JP and Woody, catching both of them from Master and Skelis off guard and transitioning in for a C site plant with 1 player in towards Garage and a plant now leveraged in for a long hold as the team starts to set up this post-plant scenario, and with a Sheriff in hand, it'll be very easy to hold down that long angle and deny, with very little utility available for the defense of St. Clair, the possibility to retake this.
I love fake plants on B towards Haven. It really looks like these teams, when they start to kind of utilize the map a little bit more like Lotus, and you kind of use that defender side half. But still, we're not seeing too much of that just yet because, well, here for round number 1, things are looking a little worse for wear here for the likes of St. Clair. A clean up coming out from Boise State, keeping 3 of their players alive. More than majority will, well, it's only round number 1. Keep in mind, it's still a nice pistol to kind of go ahead, carry some guns over, maybe pass the Sheriff off to somebody if Master opts in to do so. It can manage to buy himself something new while still sharing the love equally so. But still, kicking things off in that way, the way they did, and making sure to pick off that kind of dynamic duo we put so much emphasis on just kind of so early on. It's great looks to know that they can go ahead and kind of get the ball rolling at least off the rip.
Yeah, so first pacing set offense has worked wonderfully, and that kind of touch and go motion, that is that B-side fake into C, pays out in glorious fashion for Boise State. Now Skies is attempting to use what they've gained in round 1 as a possibility to get the first blood here for round 2. Recon Bolt goes up and over, placed into the corner in a great spot to catch most of the open space on C side. No one spotted by it, but you do have 2 players holding inside of that Radiant stack. One closer to the actual lane of C long, the other one right at the entrance of that B hall into garage, or C hall into garage, and the dangers that come from it. But an owl drone could open everything. Woody needs to clear this, because if they do, they won't have a visual to JP. But where Woody is, most times there's usually JP not too far away when it comes to the map of Haven. So this will be a litmus test in my mind, Dallas, to see if Boise State have done their homework for how St. Clair play Haven.
I think even then still, I mean, there's a bit of skepticism in play, obviously, off that initial swing coming through, where you're thinking, okay, nobody would just swing out from that end, especially if you're the only player on site. You're going to go ahead, sit on the back of that Radiant, and the drone won't reach you. Instead, he swung. There is something they are hiding back towards that site. There are more players set up than what we are aware of, and you do not want to maneuver through that just all willy-nilly. So seeing how things are going, even then a nice little initial pick coming up from St. Clair, that Marshall pick over towards the A site that lets you know that Instinct's still kind of here to play. And even then, unfortunately, he's not lined up on that C site, and knowing that's where the majority of players are coming from, that could be a good hit for at least kind of going ahead and making things difficult. But with 12 seconds left on the clock, things are just going ahead and rushing on into sight. We see some good damage being put down range by the majority of St. Clair players, and it puts, well, this man of Instinct in a situation where he's only going to hit one shot of the 2 remaining players, and well, he most definitely does. 1-to-1 to kick things off. St. Clair finding the answer back, and well, it was a bit of a force from a singular man. It was enough to get enough damage done by everybody else.
And that force opened to the first blood for the round, and also turned into 2 in this kind of trickle effect, and St. Clair are plenty happy with the result that comes from it. That not only gives you a major advantage, breaking that stereotypical mold, and throws the eco of Boise State out the window. This brings into the question for them, how much do they buy for this 3rd round, and what do they try to contest with? One player has a Vandal that'll drop their eco to about a 1,600 even across the team. That's usually the margin for credits you're looking for to still be able to buy out even the economy across, and then still have something to come in for that next. So a wise idea from Boise State's overall team, but it's going to be St. Clair's advantage through and through for this round to fight for it. And with the way First Bloods have been pretty much a always constant 1-for-1 for St. Clair, it doesn't seem like Boise State will have the chance to fight against it. And with them re-peaking, because they were trying to deny that ult orb on a long, they pay a price early I don't think they were really wanting to pay against, even with the eco round. They lose out on a loss of life, and they're feeding not only the ult orb that was freebie down through long, but also another ult pip thanks to the kill.
Is Master playing in heaven right now? Good God, I feel like from flashbang anytime I see that face.
One enemy remaining.
Dude has overexposure like nobody's business. Speaking of exposure, there it is. Skeleton swinging right into the open. JP finding that final kill and looking for a flawless round for St. Clair on number 2. So good looks there for them to go ahead and get right back into the running, kind of make sure to find an instantaneous answer considering that first round going in Boise State's direction. But anything beyond that, well, it's just round and round again here from St. Clair. And well, they have a bit of a buy on the board now, and Skies has that operator in play. So there is a bit of an actual option here for them to work with. And with that Yoru not being in hand for Master once more, talking about how he's, you know, we talked about the flex that he's been doing a little more. So between that Clove and between the Yoru, has a couple little, you know, sidewinders being thrown in there with the fade every now and again, or any other option that kind of comes the way that the team needs. But at least for this one, he's good for the first.
Man, it's one of the first times we've seen Boise State be able to strike for that first one, and St. Clair will now have to figure out what is left, especially losing out on arguably their best player so far throughout this series in these first 3, the one that gave them that second round and broke open also a little bit on the first, even though they did take that loss. Skies has a good chance to knock down Woody, sitting up on that stack, visually spotted by Master, and well, they may be up in heaven, but they're also sending shots down the other way, but JP just bulldozes through too, through that door, forces the resurrect, and not dead yet out of Master. And yes, Master can step into that space and essentially treat themselves as a run it back information giver and not really anticipating to save their life or survive. But thanks to that, Seth can move in with some speed and fervor. Gets one, maybe a second. Skies goes up to grab the gun. Skelis is trying to ward away from Hay. Chance for Seth to move in and punish this Neon who's already quite low. And Skies didn't even grab the weapon. No, they have an operator still in hand, and Seth peeks into the boomstick that they're wielding and puts this now to
30
JP
seconds
in a dire
left.
1v2 with Spike quickly sprinting its way on over to the C side, where the fact it's Cypher away. Yes, the Tripwire is still down in play. That Spike has to be handed over, and everyone is looking towards Garage, and Skies will die from a single round to finish it, but thankfully Skelis holds strong, gets that kill, and well, nope. Well, actually wants to prioritize the operator. Maybe would have gotten that on the Spike, but I think the operator's a much better credit economy choice than the utility you get from that.
Oh, man, JP, I don't know what's happened. I mean, I understand this semester has been a little bit tough in terms of the server, but I mean, all things considered, I mean, I know you're hungry for kills, but patience there, man. You know one player's putting the Spike down. You know the other one's watching the angle with the operator. That's a time where you can take that swing, find two back to back, but understandably so, just doesn't and takes the shots initially, wants to find the kill he can onto the operator, but instead you still manage to have that carried over into the next one of your Boise State. So it's good looks here from them to find some equilibrium. St. Clair had two ultimates in a round like this, and well, this is where they could go ahead and start to maybe facilitate an answer, get themselves back into the lead once more. Weapons are just universally available from each side, and that kind of creates a lot of question marks of what capabilities are going to come through in terms of the utility. And well, obviously, if you're St. Clair, you don't want to give those shots over to Skies. If you hear any shots back towards C, you know an operator should more than likely be at the end of it.
Skies has been wielding this offensively in a way that you don't anticipate a lot of teams on Haven to actually do. And I talk a lot about Haven being an operator powerhouse, and you need to kind of be unexpected, have versatility, constantly be moving it around, force teams to have to shift and, possibly even send out a semi-sacrificial lamb and make people regret not picking ISO for this map that was so popular for such a long time alongside Yoru. But it's now brought on the offense and completely changes the overall tempo and the way that Boise State will have to play this. Corner cubby not checked. Stillo will strike true for one, gets a second, eventually refragged, but Woody's standing on boxes, and from that shrouded step position will deal with Skelesis before dropping down. So St. Clair have the advantage by 2. And you know that there is a player here on site. It's just a question of where they are. And with them peeking, Skies has to pray that that crosshair from that scope is watching the right angle. And it will not be. And with that relay bolt going out, that is Seth finding the kill as you'd anticipate. And despite being the oldest man, it feels like in Division 1 still playing. He still got that dance. He still got those moves. And he gets that kill. And the double duelist choice for St. Clair is paying out early.
Hey, isn't that what the point of video games is, man? It's all about fantasy. And if your joints are hurting you in real life, why not use the fastest character in the video game you play? Just go ahead and enjoy it while you can. See how things are going here. Obviously, swift and smooth there from Seth to go ahead and close out that round. Beautiful looks, knowing the answer is there towards that A-long kind of section. Nuven players are going to go on that retreat back towards the sewers, and even more so, you don't want to have the chance of that weapon being carried over into the next. You don't want to have any players surviving, knowing how many operators are going to be present on both sides of the field. So it makes sense for those chases, for those hounding plays to go through, especially when St. Clair found themselves so many rounds in a row early on, and they've been preserving their big boomsticks relatively well. So speaking of that boomstick, it's over here towards the seaside inside garage, but it's not going to last very long with Master at the helm of the push.
Woody will have a good angle to watch and continue to hold this onto, but a Hunter's Fury out for both players is a bit unfortunate for Skelesis. They'll get a 2-for-1 special. Unfortunately, one of those was his teammate. So slight sacrifices must be made, but it's a sacrifice we're willing to make, says the Boise State side. And St. Clair have an even 3 versus 3 and a retake now, move towards this B side. One player flanking from Hay, that'll be Woody, rotating all the way down C-long to get here. They'll catch Skelesis off guard. Turret is laid over there and could be an option, but JP with an operator flicks it at a Master, and will have no chance against Daimyo, who comes in with a bandit shortly afterwards. Phantom in hand, picked up after they had taken that player down. A rotating gun position for Seth, who's just spraying through, and eventually will deal with Daimyo, as Woody will give the defuse, I believe, on over. They'll wait a little bit longer to collect what is an operator, and they will find it here in garage window. It's St. Clair. 4 rounds now to their name, but still a lot of sacrifices having to be made to come away with these victories. Boise State are absolutely contending them.
Yeah, I mean, good looks here. I mean, obviously from the side of St. Clair, that last round, obviously a little worse for where to kind of kick things off, consider that, I mean, Master at the helm of the push, as I mentioned prior, just finding a beautiful kill there to kick things off inside garage, but following afterwards, once they want to facilitate that push over towards the B site compared to over towards C, that garage pressure didn't really kind of amount to too much. Instead, it just more so kind of became a little convoluted, made things kind of a little awkward towards the middle of the map, as you do end up kind of retreating even after finding that kill, and a bit of a second guessing coming through here from Boise State. But St. Clair very, very firm in their opinions of where to go and what to do. So game plans looking nice, shots looking even better from Instinct, and all these scoped pieces of weaponry in his hands. But speaking of scopes, Skies has one in his hand too, but he doesn't look up with it.
Very low in HP. A single round from anything would deal with him, and there is no utility in the hands of Boise State that can bring them back up to full HP like we were seeing and witnessing happen so often combined with the Sky in play. Skies has no Sky, I think is what I'm trying to say. Boise State, well, their ceiling, their Sky proverbially, is very high, but they just are right now kind of in this rut. They're in this floor period of this map of Haven, where St. Clair have found a big win condition out of a couple of these players. The double duelist composition obviously being a big one, and obviously bringing out the operator just the same as Boise State have done, being the other end of that coin. And when it flips up through the air, Skies, though, will crawl their way off towards Dragon, now sitting close inside the bend. Tripwire is in play towards B main, but the spike will get here soon and shouldn't be too big of a factor to slow them down. St. Clair of Seth watching B side actively, and Tillo and Woody not too far away, but Seth into the crossfire once that tripwire goes off, and with KOS getting the refrag back, you have to get Woody onto site and swiftly, and even if you don't, that spike could rotate towards an opposing site, but that site has not been confirmed. JP's in heaven, sends one the other way, still up there, and I think Boise State have made the call. There is no reason to step into that space. If they can get the operator and get out of dodge, they'll do it. But unfortunately, boomstick for boomstick, it's a trade that goes in St. Clair's way, and it is a round win to make it 5 for this roster.
I mean, beautiful there from St. Clair. Obviously, Boise State, just a lot of, as I mentioned, the round prior, second guessing going from that C side to the B side. This time, it wasn't even second guessing. It was third, fourth. They just couldn't come up with a number. They couldn't come up with a solution in a place they really wanted to start going. And I mean, that makes sense when you're getting picked off one by one, when C is obviously being covered by an operator. You find a couple kills there, and even then still towards the B site, you know that's so open, and every time somebody's aggressively holding garage, so C doesn't look well, then that guy over towards garage definitely isn't going to be budging for a rotation. He's going to be holding strong there. It's just so many difficulties here, making Boise State's life look almost just miserable for trying to engage on anything. But I mean, if you thought that one was pretty bad, not, you know, having those full rifles in hand, things are going to obviously look much more difficult with nothing but an eco to play with, and well, a singular Vendel from iOS. So here we go, 3 ultimates on the board. There's a chance here lockdown could be employed towards sewers. You at least get the side out on that, but beyond there, what do you?
All this movement, though, and all this kind of back and forth trotting that it feels like Boise State are doing hasn't given them any leeway, hasn't given them any safe space. And in fact, the more this time has gone on, the less St. Clair are willing to give up that gap, and the more forward pressing they are. And you can see that happening down towards A-Long. You can see that also towards Garage. JP will shut down Skies, who pop the overdrive and hopes to get onto site and fight on B. And all these dark covers going down completely close out this sight line and will flush away Boise State's offense from the B side they thought could have been there for them off the back of the ultimate. With it not happening, guess what? It's a C side rotate. And that tripwire's been moved, buddy. Hate to break it to you. Skelis is spotted down with 1, make it 2. KOS somehow breaks open this C side, taking down both 7. JP has to deal with a garage player and more. Can they get Tillo? No, they can't. Running out of ammo, and it's 1 man left, Master. And they're still bright as can be, and that bright light is shining. 1v1. Spike must be grabbed and planted, and Instinct is not pressing the agenda. They will wisely wait things out. Play into this 1v1, 72 HP with some armor, but it's a one-shot kill no matter what gun it seemingly is with Master's HP pool, but that boomstick is ringing out, and it rings in for a 6th round victory for St. Clair.
I mean, beautiful looks here from St. Clair, find themselves a guaranteed even half worst case at this point, and we're only seeing Boise State at 2. So, I mean, there is a much bigger margin they can be drawing here in terms of a line in the sand, in terms of having these 2-round differentials every single point forward. But Boise State, I mean, they seemingly have answers available to them, and it makes total sense to go ahead and call a timeout here. If there's any point to do it, it would be when you see this kind of guaranteed even stance for St. Clair is, because it enters a new phase of how they're going to play the game. Of when they want to be a little more aggressive, try to throw some curveballs out there, getting your face on the defense and maybe find some early kills, or want to play more so for the retakes and play collectively with these ultimates that are starting to surmass inside of these mid stages of this half. There's a lot of possibilities, but Boise State had their own own to sort through, knowing they still have 3 ultimates of their own that they need to use. And the only time they've really used them have been very gleaming, obvious points, like that Hunter's Fury kind of answer we saw earlier.
There is a really big question, I think, up in the air now for Boise State throughout this timeout. Why has this B site been our #1 go-to? And if we're going to continue to think of B-side as a #1 go-to, Dallas, how do we adjust the way we take this site? And a big factor will obviously be the tripwire, and we saw that obviously be changed into a new spot on C-Long and changed up how Skelesis needed to play for that shock dart. They were a little bit time-pressed, so they felt like they needed to pre-send the shock dart instead of waiting to confirm its location. That obviously cost them a little bit more than they were expecting to. But B-side also has had the same issue. That tripwire, catching a player off. They wanted to overdrive. They get connected by it. They wanted to swing in for a plant. They get connected by it. They're being utility consumed right now, and it's in a pretty drastic way. So they need to be much more proactive about shutting things down in their default, in their early games of this poke and crawl. And speaking of pokes and crawls, well, there's a lot of poking 762 and Seth's Phantom, and it takes down their twin in the opposing end of Boise State. Neon off the board, and St. Clair still have all 5, and Seth makes that hasty getaway away from A-Long Cubby and can sit strong on this ace site with 2 more teammates nearby, and it's still 2 more teammates nearby thanks to Tillo surviving the first, but they've overstayed their welcome down through short and will be staying there for the time being.
Yeah, understandably so. I mean, we see that number advantage already being on the side of St. Clair. So, I mean, Tillo just kind of extending, making sure to hold his ground. So, I'm going to try to, really stick this around as long as I can. So, understandably dying there. Boise State still aren't confident enough to really kind of dedicate themselves towards that A site. Knowing more players are going to be around the area, you went ahead and had enough time to kind of lurk your players in through towards to get to that B site, make sure to kind of hold this down. But do you have players aggressing inside of these cabinets? Because in these connectors, that's where the key lies. Not back towards spawn. You know people are going to be there. You know if you're master that eventually a guy's going to run into you. And right there we see it once more. Just again and again and again. So wait and see the kill come through. Eventually, JP does find the second one off the back of that, and with that kill being made, Skelesis is effectively trapped back towards that main section of the courtyard and will find himself down once more. St. Clair find themselves not a guaranteed even half the guaranteed advantage at the end of it as they hit the number 7.
Exactly as you want to see out of St. Clair. Not just even, but positive, like you mentioned, and also maintaining the kind of superiority that's been brought from it and not requiring a million ultimates to get that job done. In fact, they've been kind of holding on to a couple of them. They haven't felt forced to bring them out. It hasn't been a big point of contention. It's your top 2 players of Seth and JP that have them, and even though they likely could charge up another one before the half ended if they'd used them when they got them instantly, Boise State haven't forced them out, which is another big problem for them offensively to try to overcome from this point onwards. Instinct sits on plat with an operator in hand, waiting to see if anyone does swing this. Owl Drone will go up and over. Instinct will vacate the line of sight as JP makes the comm. They hear it going forward. One side Cubby, that connected, but through the wall, and Skies will continue to live through that. And with that fast lane coming up, this is a huge moment for the Odin to spray and pray down that alleyway. That Skies is full connected by a flash and paranoia. Woody has easy line of sight for another one. Just Skelesis who kicks into this one, and Boise State can't pick which target to lay into, and thanks to it, St. Clair have this last player left standing and surrounded. It's St. Clair's 8th round now, with nothing Boise State have been able to bring to the table so far being enough to contest on Haven.
Yeah, very disconnected in that process, as you said. I mean, couldn't really find a singular target for all of them to kind of collectively go in on. Even then, still having the spike overextend past that Omen smoke, just go into enemy territory. You're already in enemy territory, but there's layers to this, and you chose the inmost layer. I mean, obviously, it feels like the only thing that could have been worse was taking it back into the defender side spawn and just dropping it. So one of those scenarios where it's just kind of very awkward on Boise State's end. Couldn't really find all the necessary kills. Couldn't really get the damage facilitated either. But, I mean, hey, maybe, complacency is key. We see it right here. St. Clair, obviously off to a good start once more, but, I mean, this is one of those times where they can start feeling overconfident, rushing you inside spawn and giving you the perfect opportunity to find every kill necessary to make these rounds easy pickings for you. And, well, it's awkward. It's pretty close. It's some good exchanges to kick things off, but until eventually Boise State just start hemorrhaging numbers one by one in a 3v1 scenario. Skelesis knowing he's staring down the barrel of at least 2 separate players, but even then with so many bullets raining through that wooden, arch, it's still just going to be too much for him to handle.
Yeah, that wood frame could not uphold and handle these shots going against him, and St. Clair, well, they're dominating this first half. We're heading to the last round of this first half. It has been 7 in a row and very well could be an 8, and we could already be at 10 round wins for St. Clair. Now, bear in mind, Haven is still usually a defender-sided map. You do more times than not see it go to such a wide spree, but 9-3 has been the worst case scenario for many a team here, but this is Boise State side who have been so good about their offense. Has always been one of the best teams statistically on their offensive side of things. That was a huge talking point for us last split. They were statistically the most dominant attacking team in comparison to their defending side. That has to be a continuous factor here. But unfortunately, this first half hasn't been the chance to do it, and they now need to be the defending team. Daimyo, though, opens things up for 2 off towards C Long. That gives them and confirms them that C side. And now you'll have a post-plant scenario, 3 versus 5, where the only ultimate you had was Tillo's Hunter's Fury, and with Skies knocking Tillo off the board, and with a KOS getting one more, I think Seth made the calm. I'm just walking into there. We'll take a 9-3 half. We're still happy with it, but that last round was not great for our side.
Yeah, I mean, there's been glimpses of hope coming through here for Boise State. I mean, they've been very good on the shots. A lot of their combats, once they actually get to kind of establishing a line in the sand and meeting at it, more so playing Red Rover than Valorant, we do see those kills going in their direction. We do see them able to manage to get a lot of these successful picks back to back. I mean, look at Master, look at Skelesis, the work they're putting in. Even then 2 rounds ago when Daimyo was hitting those nasty flicks there to kind of go ahead and put himself back on the board, we're seeing that presence. We're seeing that capability come through. But the St. Clair issue is they were finding so many kills so early, and they were playing so aggressively into the attacker side spawn, where even then more times than not, Boise State, as I mentioned, that suffocation inside the attacker side spawn, they were feeling that. I mean, keep in mind, we saw at least 3 rounds where they were just kind of held up and just completely stalled inside of that C-long territory. Here on the attacker side, I doubt St. Clair are going to fall victim to that same exact threat, because already Steph is inside. Tillo's found 1, scouring about, and even then still you got more reinforcements pushing on the site while Garage is being flooded.
This is the exact movement St. Clair were hoping to act off of, with Seth being that first man out into B sites. You kind of distract, ward away so much of Boise State's defense that they try to move in for an expected B site take, and then the whole thing is elsewhere, and there's players kind of scratched everywhere here or there, peppered across the map, and finding themselves on the left side of the kill feed where you'd like to be. And Boise State on the wrong end of it. That's your 10th round. That's your double digits. That's your checkpoint or chokehold. And with the mold of that 2-1 start that we did see get broken by St. Clair in the first, it doesn't seem like Boise State will try to bring up anything heavy-handed for this second round of the half. Just that one Marshall in hopes to find the first blood like we saw Instinct do in round 2. And they'll also have to find 2 more after that fact, and 2 more from any other opposing players to get that job done. St. Clair primed themselves in for a C-long take, all but 2. The rest waiting in mid-courtyard to see if anyone will try to take the rotate back to attacker spawn.
Damage off the first shock dart, but the second one looking like at least amounts to a little something, but everything else still comes out of St. Clair, and obviously the kind of damage they're trying to facilitate here. Boise State are trying to hold these awkward off angles, maybe look to catch a player straggling about, being caught off guard, and with Instinct having to clear every single angle and nothing but a scope, it's going to make things a lot easier for him. But talking about players, even the ones that aren't scoped in, we're going to see a nice little cleanup to the middle of the map with that. So, I mean, there we go. Good looks here from the side of Boise State to keep things relevant, keep things close, but better yet, to manage a lead. Beautiful picks to the middle of the map, I mean, honestly. Bandit in hand, I mean, that gun, what it can do is just disgusting, especially when players are off guard. Sure, Classic could do that kind of job, but the Bandit makes it much easier, allowing you to find a second.
Tillo will sit off towards spawn, just hoping anyone will pressure them. They did see the shoulder of Master. There it is. You have an even 2-on-2. This is very much so doable. Spike will be collected. You've got a player deep within C already moving through Garage. They'll have a long play, which at least hold down that initial angle. You got to get through this door fast, though, unless KOS can spot you. Tillo wants to take that fight, but we'll have to make the hasty sprint and getaway on towards site, and they'll play for a defensive-sided hold, as Daimyo will try to go in as fast as possible, can confirm they're not planting in default, and will now need to burn a little bit of utility to do so. Double flash goes out. Tillo will still be connected by it, unfortunately. Hipfire available. How on earth does he hit that before it goes down? But Daimyo's just built different. Shot connects, and Boise State will make it in this round to overcome St. Clair.
Keeping it rolling. Just kind of keep the game alive. Keep the dream in play. I mean, that's what we saw Boise State do during the last playoffs as well. While things were usually looking worse for wear for them, they still found some good rounds. They're going to keep things relevant, keep the game rolling, keep themselves in check, and say, hey, Just put the
Imagine
respect
if
on
I
our name.
died
Don't
right now.
play this willy-nilly.
So
Don't give us a
thrifty.
game where you see us as
How about I
seed
only
number
bring the
6. Like, we're
VAL
not going to make
next time?
that run because that will be your biggest mistake. And I love what Boise State's done. The way they keep themselves just relevant. The way in these rounds when you really start to sleep on them, when you start to kind of go ahead and, as an opposing team, put that disrespect down, they don't let it slide. And that's what I was trying to, allude to earlier. But right now, I mean, obviously they made the point themselves.
So, with everything being said so far in the first half and kind of the tone that's being set now for the second half, it does feel like still St. Clair are in control and know what to do, and Boise State have to make them uncomfortable, right? You have to change things up. You have to be it has to be a player-driven effort, individual-driven effort with your teammates behind you. One of the things we mentioned in the first series was how it felt like West Virginia were playing such a solo game. We saw them start to fall back to a little bit more reliance on their team, and they made the comeback on map 2 to get into overtime and obviously win in overtime. I think we're in the same spot. Is it doable to accomplish that and come away with map 1? Statistically unlikely with how much of a lead there is. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but you always have another map in front of you. And if you just drill in those fundamentals, drill in that mindset shift before you head over into map 2, you prepare map 2 that much more efficiently for you, and you very well could take it and then lead us into a 3-map series. If we go through the first round of players without seeing a full 3-map series, Dallas, I would be very impressed. But I think Boise State could very well do it, but they need to start readying themselves. Even if they're not anticipating a win on map 1, they have to ready themselves across through to get into map 2, both mentally and physically, to accomplish that task.
I mean, because there's a lot of things that really plague St. Clair, obviously. As I mentioned earlier, they had that kind of whole complacency problem, I feel like, to a degree, where there's times when they, they feel very systematic more times than not, the majority of the time. And that usually works into their favor, where they like to have these lines drawn. They like to have these connections made, almost like a detective's evidence board. But there are times when they just kind of say, hey, what if we're all on the same page, and just kind of really push out here. And we saw in a round like that where it did work out for them, but it's not going to be your repeated success. It's not going to be one of those kind of things that play, because Boise State, we've seen them like to have that patience in those earlier starts. They don't like to play over aggressive on the attacking side. They don't like to really get in there. That's why their attacking side has looked so successful, because they don't kind of fall into that same mindset as a lot of other teams, is saying, just go, just get it over with. Like, what's it matter? Like, they actually kind of think it out. They second guess some sites, sometimes to their own detriment, but more times than not, actually panning out very well for them. And that's why they like those maps like Abyss. That's why Haven, they felt comfortable kind of leaving inside the pool, because they're okay with utilizing every single one of those sites to the fullest extent. Like, even what we saw out of the first round of them on the attacking side when they went through the B site towards C, utilizing all these resources available instead of being kind of one, or better yet, 3-dimensional, when there's a lot more perspective you could take.
Yeah, so they need to widen the viewpoint, right? And I think that's the way you do that defensively. We talked a lot about seeing skies with that operator in hand. You could bring that out again, but then you have to be that much more unpredictable. You have to be both predictable while also unpredictable. That's how you kind of bait people in. You talk a lot about comparing it to American football. You got to have a run game to establish your throwing game, right? I think it's the same thing right now. You have to be able to establish your presence on one objective to then bait them into not assuming that you'll be there in a different round. And that could be as simple as getting it online and then playing two objective C site hits in a row of just kind of waiting for them to come to you. Or it could be something as simple as getting that initial first spawn peek out through B, standing on boxes or wherever you may be to accomplish that task. I think the operator also could be fluidly moved between you and something like an Omen, who can have more viability to go up at high ground control and take those shot opportunities before tossing it down. That fluidity, I think, would greatly help out Boise State, because when we compare this roster, they feel like a pretty even across the board team when it comes to shooters. It feels like every one of them are near the same level, and you have players who are maybe more clinical. You have some players who maybe have a little bit more of a strategic mind, and some of them have coaching experience. They've got a lot of playing experience, right? But coaching experience alongside it. So that was a big question. Too many cooks in the kitchen for a long time for them. They obviously had fixed that at one point. I think that they just need to trust that each person could do it, and I think they could really shock out a lot of these moments for St. Clair just by having a little bit more fluidity with that and, testing the waters a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, with Boise State, the problem for them, as you said, isn't the fragging. It's more so creating those opportunities to go in for those frags. Because a lot of the times, even when you look at every single team, it feels like they kind of go ahead and get a couple rounds. But if you look at the kills across the board, they're still relatively similar compared to all the other teams. And they're very easily an outlier in that regard. It's enough to get them into playoffs. It's enough to put them apart from Ohio State and Utah, clearly, because they would go ahead and kind of just completely dust the likes of those two teams. When you look at them going up against anybody above them, that's when they really like to feel like kind of lock in. I like to see that's when they really kind of be a lot more attentive, a lot more cautious, a lot more careful, and better yet, a lot more hungry to find these gunfights that go in their way. And they managed to do that. The issue is the utility isn't there. The layers aren't there in the same degree. Well, on the defensive side of the map, it's very easy to kind of not really worry about the utility coming your way, considering you're just holding a singular angle, finding any of the kills that come to you.
Yeah, with Master getting 3 and Skies finding 2, not only does Boise State escape out of round 15 with a win, they do it flawlessly and with a house of cards, a full house between those two players, just lonesome, handling C sites. And St. Clair were none the wiser about how to really direct their pressure into C in a smart way, or really in a safe way, I think would be the better way to phrase that one. But as quick as it is over, the next round will begin, and St. Clair will have an attack that can start to poke at other sides with rifles in hand, start to direct some tempo and pacing, maybe towards B side as they are setting up for a default for control of courtyard. Maybe one player lapping in towards lobby on A to see if they can get a visual down long. No matter what it is, it does seem like you're going to need to play into this kind of no man land zonage and more than just one site to kind of keep this Boise State side at a dangerous arm's distance reach away from you, Dallas.
And even then, still KOS going ahead, giving his location away in that process, knowing that judge shot's going to rain out for the right side. That lets you know that if you do end up pushing that B, you need to look out for that angle. But even better yet, seeing how many shots are going into this B site lets you know that maybe we don't want to go here at all if you're St. Clair. Start pivoting somewhere else. See if you can have that numbers advantage. See if you can overwhelm a player, because I mean, keep in mind, this is still kind of a weird buy situation from the side of Boise State, and they're going to have some, outlaws, some judges, some just weird kind of off picks when it comes around to the kind of arsenal that you're working with. So speaking of that outlaw stationed over at A, it seems like, well, looking at giving up that site, St. Clair have a hunch it's going to be placed there as they go ahead and shut it down. Seth being the one to obviously push up. He found his first. He looked like he wanted to extend for a second for just a moment, but why do you need to do that when it looks like Boise State is coming to you to find their death?
St. Clair's openers have been clean, and Boise State are walking towards you. KOS refracts the loss of Master, but with 3 players peeking really the same angle, and flinching for a moment there, Dallas. I'm sure you were too, but all of them swinging the exact same angle at the same time for lining them up.
Yeah,
you still managed to knock down that final player. It's Woody credited with the kill. And St. Clair will now be at 11 round wins. Fairly back and forth so far through this second half, but with the successive round wins in a row they gained in the first, it feels like St. Clair are trying to drive the point home. They wanted Haven. They will take Haven, and there's nothing Boise State can do about it. But Ultimates are still here. The not dead yet for Boise State could be a huge factor for success defensively to hold on to an objective if they lose out in the first fight. But with this dimensional shift going out for St. Clair, they will get every piece of information they can ask for to use the Hunter Spear alongside it, and it should confirm at least one kill, but I think they got it in with a shot effect afterwards from Woody, and it's a 2-for-1 trade to start things off.
And go ahead, you have all these ultimates in hand. Why not kind of push the agenda, bring that pressure to a side, utilize as much as you can to maybe get yourself an early good start and find an execution, find that round underneath your wing. But even then, they can't manage it. Boise State and Sky, specifically with that operator in hand. I talk about these curveballs. I talk about these players who are just so sufficient in making sure to utilize that gun to the fullest extent during the couple rounds when the team's least expected. And well, it's usually the Neon bringing that to the table, or a Jet. Just funny enough, is at least your duelist who has a way to kind of go ahead and dash around if things really start to hit the fan and look ugly, and get out of dodge to make sure to save it if things don't go right. But I mean, it went nothing but right for Skies there. So finding number 6 on the board, Boise State have hit that kind of even round threshold. If we were in mat number 1, unfortunately we're not. We're looking at 11 rounds on the side of St. Clair, and well, with Instinct managing to kind of go ahead and kick things off and find that pick on towards the operator here, well, they only want to keep that trend running.
Yeah, now you've got an operator, you gained it, and they'll walk away from that spacing with it. Woody will be taken down by skill assist, but that kind of pseudo-duelist of that Clove has been so good for Boise State, both on offense and defense, more so here on defense where they've really come alive. It feels like St. Clair, having two true duelists on their side, has had some semblance of it carried over for Boise State, which is the change up of that Clove instead of the Oro, but time will ultimately tell if it's going to matter. This round is being led by Boise State confirmably with this kill from Daimyo, but as soon as you see a lead gained and player advantage, something goes back the other way, and Master is forced to use the not dead yet. Stepping back, avoiding the stun and concuss that's coming out from the utility is St. Clair off that shock dart. Skelesis has to refrag Master if they manage to take down one. It's one player left for St. Clair. Tillo, who has Spike under their control and can rotate to either B or C side. And with KJ down, there's no Sentinel utility there for Boise State to actually deny this step forward. Yes, there is a pseudo Sentinel out of this Viper, but that's going to be a big gamble. They've already extended themselves past what would be that toxic screen you would rely on as the utility is pulled out. And that's the worst thing to do when swinging an active angle. Boise State will easily deal with that last lonesome man, and St. Clair will be kept away from 12.
You know they're in transition at least. They're going to be around that angle. I understand going for the the recon bolt, but even then still, you know that they're going to be somewhere. They're going to be hopefully holding an angle with two of them together at any point in time. And well, unfortunately, he didn't even win the first fight there against KOS. So especially knowing a second one could be behind the scenes, it's just even more deadly past that point. So another round where we see St. Clair's wallet kind of knocked down a couple notches, and they're right back into a situation where they can make things doable once again, especially considering the last round, how worse for where that looked, and they still made it into a 1v2, but still, Seth, ultimate in hand, there's going to be a time to use it, and well, understandably so. Using it now to go ahead and at least clear out the C-side for the rest of your team could be a good call.
Unfortunately, Skies will still flick you down with the operator. Woody, who used the ultimate from the shadows to get into the corner behind Plaid, is now just avoiding these op shots going their way. Maybe one more to be sent by Skies. They're hesitating about the perfect angle for it and trying to stay far away from it to buy as much of a I would say body distraction as possible for the rest of the team. May not matter. Overdrive comes out for Sky. Sky's extending to maybe deal with where this Omen would be, but they've fallen back in to transit behind Platt. Woody will refrag out their teammate, and though they do strike true for two, Boise State have been really clinging about that retake into their side of defense. This has been exactly what we had to see out of Boise State Dallas defensively. A completely different game from their offense, and it has thrown St. Clair kind of out the window in many a way for how they have to adjust.
Yeah, just a lot of awkward encounters here from St. Clair where it feels like they're kind of overextending again. Same situation as I mentioned prior, where it just feels like they're kind of giving not enough respect to Boise State. They feel like this is just a number 6 seed team, not that big a deal. Just kind of go ahead, run in there, try to find those frags, and just see what's given up to you. But I mean, Boise State is not giving this game up for free. We can tell that very clearly. This is St. Clair's selection, and yet they are still held at a margin of 3 by Boise State. Even if they end up winning this, there has to be a lesson learned for map number 2, because that's inevitable that you can't just run at them and treat them as if they are not worth facing.
Instinct will wait here in this courtyard. Again, an eco round for St. Clair. How much space can they conceivably buy towards Garage? Because that could be your big ticket item, so to say, in Dallas, and your approach to either take C-side or inside link to go through B. But they have no decoy being shot in B, and I think that would kind of sing out to Instinct that they very well could either gate crash into that space or maybe take a rotate if possible. They'll walk and edge their way through this B side, and I think now with that link being covered and swinging that, it should be the signal to send to your team to make their way to B just the same. But timing was tight, and Skies, I think, just barely missed the visual of the flank of Instinct. And this is where Instinct will test the waters of going into this link and can catch a player and hit some in the head. Wow! Skies not flicking in time. Pop flash out. Master around the corner. It's an operator collected, and Instinct wants to use it. Does so well. Striking for a second. Daimyo back of sight. Wants to use the lockdown. Is hesitating. This hesitation could be their undoing. That's their head off. Woody with a second on top. It's icing on the cake. That is B site with Spike down. Skelesis 1 versus 3. Woody behind Gong and another player holding this inside lane. They've been spotted, and Tillo will spray. Skelesis just inches away from dealing with 2, if not just the 1 behind Tillo. And every player for St. Clair are looking to shut down that transition out of sight. They don't want to let this player get away. They know an operator has been grabbed, and they're willing to sacrifice a player to do so, and they'll have to just deal with the facts. Skelesis will maintain that off, and it will go into the next, but St. Clair are at match point on map 1.
Beautiful look and recovery from them there. This is the second time we've seen St. Clair, specifically Instinct, at least. I mean, I would say I've seen it at least 2 more times out of them. I mean, every single time there was in a 3v situation, when St. Clair actually start to treat Boise State like a threat and they slow things down and start to assess the situation in front of them, they get into a scenario where, hey, I mean, things are looking pretty good. Like, hey guys, we're finally managing some kills that we feel like we should be squeaking out, where we should be able to kind of get in these scenarios where we can actually pull together some more guns and make these look doable. But when they don't do that, which felt like has been now at least 8 rounds, that's where things just start to go astray.
And what is there to change, right, for Boise State? When they win, they look really good winning, right? When they fall apart, it seemingly is off of big heroics from individuals from St. Clair. But you can't stop those big heroics. You can't shut down those players like that. Where there's a hero, there's going to be a theme song ringing in the background, and somebody else is going to pick up the mantle. They're going to put the cape on and then fulfill that same exact role. And I think the issue is, we've talked about it, feels like anyone in St. Clair can be the individual hero, and Boise State fall victim to just weird caught in transition moments, caught in translation moments, it feels like sometimes, where they're just choosing the wrong time for things. Great connection with the first shot from Skelesis with that Hunter's Fury, but as a decoy, they don't care too much about it. And that's one of those moments that irk you and I, Dallas, using a Hunter's Fury without any active information. And St. Clair plenty happy, burning one of your very important post-plant ultimates. And, you know, stopping ultimates or plant-stopping ultimates are early in the round.
I know exactly.
Guns now. This is a scenario here for St. Clair. Beautiful start with the neural theft to know at least where the majority of these players are if they do end up opting in for this A site. There's plenty of times to rotate to come through from Boise State. You still have players they go around the map, look for these alternative angles. The lockdown and close down that small little cubby, tucks back towards the A main entrance. So it's going to be an easy call to go ahead and say, why not continue to flood here? And even then, when you have instinct up towards heaven, creating that kind of distraction, creating that sharks in the water feeling, suffocating Boise State inside their own site, and there's not really much you can do. It's nothing but Skelesis and Skies here still to make the play, but I don't think they're going to be able to do it here. KOS can't stay alive. He can't get the job done. And, well, and Daimyo being the only one standing in a 1v4 situation, every other time you make the call to save here, but there is no option this time. Spike is planted. You're covering as many corners as you can, trying to check every single angle. Issue is, well, the first thing you run into on the site, that's Tillo. That's game number 1, and that's St. Clair winning things out pretty strongly there towards the end. But up until that point, they gave a lot over, I'd say.
Talk about a round, though, for Seth, and talk about a map for Seth for St. Clair. Yeah, there was a couple moments where it got a little dicey, but they were there from beginning to end. And that's something that we were kind of seeing to struggle out of Seth, right? They'd be big rounds and they'd show up, and then other times they just weren't as involved. And a lot of that does come off of them being more utility-driven on the average map, but you hand them a duelist role, and even when we saw it last time, I had mentioned they only had, 12 kills in total? Felt like they had that 12 rounds in. They had that 8 rounds in. They had it 6 rounds in. Like, this was Seth going crazy to open things off here, and that's exactly what you wanted to see out of not just your second duelist, because that was the role they were in before, but the primary duelist for your team, the person who's forced to close the gap, the person you're relying on to close that gap. And we don't like to pat duelists on the back to do so, but we'll definitely pat Seth on the back for stepping into a system that they're not usually driven to do against a team that is usually thriving in moments where they're the attacking team and do better, and they just get outperformed, outclassed in that capacity.
Yeah, I think, I mean, going into mat number 2, there's going to be time to kind of obviously let things unravel once more. Looking at split, that's going to be St. Clair's selection. We actually saw the pick, funny enough, come through from Boise State on Haven. But, I mean, more times than not, that's why I kind of made that joke, or even then alluded to talking about, St. Clair going ahead and choosing that, because we saw what they were managing to accomplish on that map, but it felt like there was too many rounds where they were just effectively kind of giving up, where even then Boise State on the attacking side, we saw them, there's so many times of just, as I said, second thoughts, third thoughts, fourth thoughts, where they were just backing off, so unconfident about the push that was going through. But on the defensive side, they never actually kind of did that same thing. That inconfidence actually gave them a benefit. It allowed them to play those fights out on site. It allowed St. Clair to preemptively use a lot just to kind of go ahead and scan things out, expecting players to push up. So once the actual fights unraveled on those sites, well, Boise State had a lot more to work with. And on split, it's a much smaller map.
Yeah.
Much, much smaller map. Less sites to work with. less avenues to really hold there. And it's going to be less utility having to be used by St. Clair on the attacking side to get all the information necessary to make an educated guess.
So guesswork is all out the window. Map 1 has been confirmed, and Map 2 is still yet to come. But before we jump on over to Map 2, we're going to take a quick break before we go. Remember, this series is not over. Boise State could very well force that third map, force us into contention, and the playoffs could very well still be Winthrop versus Boise State to go. But St. Clair obviously set the tempo earlier, managed to hold on, and wants to go to face off against Winthrop for the next. But we'll find out after this break. Don't go anywhere.
What would you do if you couldn't fail? Would you see every setback as a catalyst to keep going? This is the innovator's mindset, because innovation demands daring. It's finding thousands of ways that don't work, and the one that changes everything. Because we know changing the world doesn't happen by chance. It comes out of the blue.
felt human. Am I alone? Do I belong here? They paint the world in black and white, it's confusing. I wanna let them know that I'm something else. I don't care what you say to me, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between
just fall in line. What's the point of living life if it ain't even mine? All the best things I know sit in the void. It makes me wanna scream that I'm something else. I don't care who I'm meant to be, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between. Cause I'm something else. I don't care what you see in me, 'cause I'm someone else. This is what happens between. Tell me when you love. She's a looker, my only fascination. So come on over. She has me levitating, yeah. Let me feel love.
Map 1, much closer than it looked like it was going to be at halftime. The ending results, Boise State coming away with multiple rounds in a row, but not able to close out the map as a whole. St. Clair instead coming away the victors. But boy, a close call and something they'll have to be privy to and ready for as we jump on over to map 2.
Yeah, I mean, map 2 being a bit of a tobacco here, considering it's split. This is where a lot more kind of skirmishes happen. We're not really designating too much towards sites, just more so towards gunfights. Because keep in mind, you're always looking towards the middle of the map, trying to go ahead and establish that control. And well, usually a kill or two goes ahead and unfurls from that. So, things considered, this should be a good look for Boise State, because knowing them, they have found a lot of really good kills and they are really firing on all cylinders there. Issue is their utility could use a little bit of work. And well, once they get onto that site and if they get into a post-plant scenario, that's where things are going to go a little stray. So, I mean, Split is a very close quarters map. It's very small, not nearly as aggressive as Buy, but still enough to go ahead and at least warrant a couple free easy kills for them if they can make sure to manage that.
Yeah, big question up in the air. How is this one ultimately going to pan out? And I think the other question is going to be, how is Agent Select going to look? Big difference maker on map 1 was Seth in that duelist role playing the Neon. Not something they're typically doing, but for a map like Haven, something they have been testing the waters on. We even saw Phoenix there before, right? So it's obvious that St. Clair are willing to kind of let Seth fulfill multiple positions, new ideas, overall new systems, right? Is there a new system for them over here for Split? And when we compare how the first series went, because he did see this map go down, the double central for one side over the other in a very close call as to whether or not that was the right call. Obviously, in the first half on their offense, it felt like you had mentioned a weight that was more so weighing them down, but it ran over to the defense. It worked spectacularly. But this is also a map where you're expecting to see scorelines very similar to the scoreline we saw at the end of the first half on Haven. Very much so. One person, or one team, I should say, dominating at halftime. 9 threes, 10 twos, 8 fours, right? That is the expected result, and it becomes a mental battle and a physical battle to survive into the second and carry that over. And Boise State were so close on map 1. If they cannot get ahead here on this first half of the second map, and they have to play the recovery game in the second, can they accomplish the task that was set out for them on map 1 that they could not get done at the end?
Well, I think the composition they're running better suits this map than what we saw in the likes of Haven. We don't have the Yoru kind of coming through for the likes of Master, but with Eklo, I feel like does have a lot more kind of merit being here inside a Split. Those smokes have a lot more impact, even more so you have a lot more close corners because, you know, in that case, your Decay has a lot more impact to it. It just feels like a lot more skirmishes and able to kind of kick up that dust and utilize it like what we see kind of in Bind. So knowing once again that we see even in the answer coming through on the side of St. Clair where they're running that Phoenix. They want to play with these curveballs. They want to have these extra flashes, but they don't want to use the Yoru to really facilitate as much. But having a secondary life, I think it's going to be just as important, considering it's a lot easier to get it with Phoenix, I believe, than it is for Clove.
Yeah, so it's a lot of utility difference here and survivability difference. Seth now back on once again that kind of primary duelist system with Instinct. Over here, the Phoenix can heal themselves up to fight for more. KOS, who got very deep on site, will have to deal with one more shot from St. Clair. And overall, Boise State in this first pistol round have not been exactly the victor of these gunfights. Instinct will have their head dropped by Skies, though on this side looking in, it didn't look like it was a headshot, but Scylla will make sure that this one is very obviously a one-shot kill from this range. Deals with that, the waylay from quite the distance away, and will make sure St. Clair goes up 1-0 to start off this map.
Just really good looks there. Obviously, key things out from St. Clair. 4 players alive. I mean, near flawless on their end. Able to go ahead and establish themselves, at least on this map, that, hey, we are putting respect on their names. It felt like we kind of went ahead, swinging a little too hard, a little too recklessly to kick things off during Haven. But here inside Split, I mean, I think they're kind of going ahead, keeping themselves in check pretty early to kind of go ahead and stabilize their mentality, because knowing that they don't want to let themselves get ahead of it, it's a map where these rounds also happen much quicker. So keep in mind, if you go ahead and keep on running at the likes of Boise State, just recklessly, these rounds will go by, and you will find yourself down just countless amounts of points so quickly. But even then still, we talk about being fast right there, a little too much patience, a little too being slow to the cut, and well, you don't end up finding anything off the result of it, where we can find ourselves another situation where 4 players alive are heading around 3.
It's one of those moments where trigger discipline, you try to use it in a way that can give you more than just the single kill that's in front of you, but that one kill would have been a lot better than the 0 kills you got. And the corner pop flash curveball from Instinct flashes you completely, and there's no turnaround when Instinct hears the shots coming his way and just quickly flicks and goes for the hit fire to the torso to get the job done. That is 2 in a row for St. Clair, as you'd anticipate, the 2-1 start, but that requires the 1 round here for Boise State, and there are plenty of great guns in St. Clair's hands here, Dallas. They could continuously use to pound that pressure forward, and having 2 duelists means that there is a ton of utility and a ton of closing gap pieces of equipment that are on the docket for this offense of St. Clair to strike true for a first. And with a body shot out of Instinct and more, they may have just done exactly that. Close the gap if you can. Relay bolt makes no contact. Second swing, Sheriff up. Instinct forced to fall back now thanks to the snake bite. But that is a major win in the book here for St. Clair to knock big weapons out in these first confrontations, just breaking even across in terms of kills.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing how things are really going. I mean, a good state here for both sides, obviously. For Boise State to kind of go ahead, have some leeway to close out a round, but even then, better yet for St. Clair, considering that they don't have the best weaponry here. They're carrying bonuses over, and they're still making things equal across the board. JP can't manage to find the kill there, but still, on the chase, they are eyeing this B site. They really want to put a presence here in this left side of the map. They haven't really exercised this too much. They did it during round number 1. They look good there, and even then they could look good here. So as awkward as it may be,
1 enemy remaining.
when he still finds some JP
B.
still finds some trade, and well, knowing the final player's up towards heaven, it is close damage, but not quite yet. Daimyo comes out on top. Boise State finds their 4.
15 HP, 1 more bullet would have gotten it done as well. That's how close round 3 was. But St. Clair, they accomplished the major task set in front of them. Bury the eco, right? Try to knock as many of their guns they were carrying over as they can. And anything they did purchase didn't make it not matter at the end of the day. And the offense can just continue to strive forward in the same concept they've had throughout the last few. The default has been quite the interesting affair, and it's been Instinct kind of rotating alongside Saf, going down into lower sewer, taking the middle swing in there towards mid, finding and contesting, over to run it back online. This is a free frag on a Daimyo who's caught stuck inside that Tasmanian Tiger, with Skelis hunting for a kill in Garage, not expecting 3 players there after the run it back was used on A lobby. They may have just confirmed a site that they had no intention of initially going towards, and no intention of one Boise State to anticipate that it was going this way. I think it's all but confirmed now with this spike heading in to go for plant, and they'll plant it for a Garage hold.
That's just good looks there. I mean, already St. Clair, though, making sure that they try to preserve whatever lives they can, but not doing the best job when it comes around to Instinct, as Master does find the pick there with the Bucky. Going on the rotation, Matillo is ready, already holding up that middle. Boise State has not done the attendance check. They have not spread themselves thin enough to understand the, the roadblocks that can be stationed across the map. And well, they want to go for that retake. St. Clair are just very aggressive, get in there, get the job done, and put their presence on the field.
Now you have to worry if you are Boise State heading into this next round defensively. You don't get to choose these battles. You don't get to pick and poke where you want to.
Right.
St. Clair ultimately can determine if this is going to be a 2v1 fight or if this is going to be a 5v1 fight. They spot anyone by their loans and they take advantage of it very quickly. They're not one to fall back. They don't have the greatest agents to close that gap. They don't have a Waylay, they don't have a Neon, but they do have a Raze, they have boost packs, they have a ton of flashes in their back pocket, and Paranoia's on top. Even if they were to lose out on this initiator fade, that doesn't feel like an impossibility to come back from it. And it's just a single player, and you've still claimed the majority of that space off towards garage. Relay Bolt will force and flush Seth away from the initial entrance in towards main. Mailroom will be smoked off, and KOS will have a very big confrontation in front of them here for Woody in this 1v1. The Woody could easily step forward, grab a hold of this ultimate, get that ult pip, get the ult online, and then use that as a way to obviously move that spike over towards an opposing side, as JP is getting a lick of their own taste here. They have been the player to spray through walls, and now Daimyo's done right back. That's now 2 opening kills for Boise State.
Yeah, and beautiful ones at that. I mean, Daimyo really laying down the law there, getting all that damage. Even then, I thought for a second he was going to find that headshot in instinct. Now it's going to be like, what's he catching strays for? But still manages to just finish the kill there to JP instead. So St. Clair still has 3 players remaining no matter what. And with the From the Shadows coming into play on top of the showstopper, you manage to get yourself another kill, but Master finds a nice easy exchange, gets the arm on top of it to follow after the fact, where you can start fighting a little bit longer, but you have the man advantage. So you want to go ahead, slow things down, hold the reins, and wait for the foot to come through. Wait for the assistants to start piling on top, and while Instinct finds, you know, a 3rd kill for the round, Woody goes ahead and just completely neglects any efforts being brought out by Boise State. That seemed like a clear retake underway. I mean, obviously with the utility coming through, maybe not enough coming from that screen side. That's more of a looking back and, you know, figuring out again what should be different. But in the moment, everything seemed fine. Just beautiful shots coming out.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where you're not trapped in here with me, you know, with yourself. It's not you versus us. You're trapped in here with me, and I think that St. Clair know the strengths of the angle they were holding. There's only so many places to go into. It's a weird flick out of instincts as they were watching a little bit further on to expected heaven play, and now we're anticipating Boise State being so down to earth and direct on sight, but ultimately the choices were made, and St. Clair come out the positive victors thanks to it. A possible 5th round for them if they can get the early lead as they've been good about. They'll get the first blood if your Boise State off the back of a Bucky from Skelesis, and Skelesis once more. 2nd swing, Instinct now off. Tillo will get the refrag, but that's a 2 for 1. You will take that any day of the week if you're Boise State.
That's right.
And that sends St. Clair into a downward spiral, with Master now lopping the head off JP off towards A. This is bad. 2 versus 4, you have the gun advantage, and yes, you haven't been able to grab any of those if you're Boise State, but they're there, you know they're there, and you want them, and it's just a matter of time, because eventually these players will have to transition into a site. It's just about getting the spike back, and that is completely under the control of Boise State.
Yeah, just in the middle of the map, and not unrecoverable to say the least, but I mean, you could work for an alternative angle here. You just don't want to go for it on that A site where Master is sitting about. That's a player who's been just a huge pain point for the like St. Clair so far. Again and again and again, can't really manage to get the job done, but obviously a Master holding a little more aggressively, it's a very easy call for St. Clair to go ahead and say, well, we continue to push this. Why not? But even easier for Boise State to say, he's got to be coming from B. Watch Mail. This guy's going to die.
Woody will step down. We'll gain it. 1 versus 3 is not impossible, but with every player for Boise State crawling into mid, you can at least confirm that they have rifles now in hand, and Daimyo went through garage to do it. That's a free frag if I've ever seen it, and it's a thrifty round win for Boise State. He who controls mid controls the map of Split. That has always been the statement to say for this map. Even after the map reworks, it has always been he who controls mid controls this round and controls the overall map as a whole, and Boise State did a much better job in this round of shutting down the St. Clair movement into that mid space and getting kills and capitalizing. Big shout out to the Bucky to get the job done, an eco breaker weapon to get to accomplish the task in front of them, and it was a very monumental one that they took advantage of.
Yeah, and even then, I mean, with the score disparity not being all that large, Boise State has plenty of ultimates of that fizzle here. But they also got some good information as well, knowing players are up towards A main. But how many? You already know the Vipers more than likely going to be around that part of the map, and JP is very good at holding on his own. Issue is, Daimo's just looking a little bit better at it. Because while JP's looking for an exchange of 1, Daimo finds 2 before dying, and well, makes it quite easy for the rest of the team to go for a retake if they do opt in for that, which eventually they're going to have to. But Woody finds 1 up and towards the heaven, and well, anything else that's going to come underway, well, it's going to have to go through St. Clair's ultimate and their own utility disposal as well. 1 by 1, Tello and Steph find 2. You want to make sure you keep these numbers relatively even, but the issue is Woody's now coming to play as well. So KOS in a 1v3 situation, he's still trying for it. He's still making it expensive. The 1v3 is a little questionable. The 1v2 is a lot more feasible. Able to also get the first to make a third. Brother is clearing out sight like nobody can touch him.
That is exactly what you want to see out of Boise State. Hero moments, shaking his head into competition as St. Clair fed into one man and one man only. And even though you saw the decision by Woody to hold back, the rest of the team could not. Rotated instead of rotating around pillar, Dallas, they went straight to screens. They chose an angle that was wall bangable, and they paid the price for it. It's small decisions like that in the moment where a make it or break a decision could kill you, gets you killed. And it's finally St. Clair at the other end of that choice in Boise State to capitalize. Now defensively, they're still kind of struggling in the eco department, and Skelesis wants to just send it. They've got the overdrive ready. They'll pop it. JP is, well, it takes a second. He gets there, but he gets the kill nonetheless. And Skelesis will continue hunt through attacker spawn and hopes to find more. But with that being sung, St. Clair say, yeah, they're putting a lot of players that way. Let's hit B fast. And they're paying out with numbers here defensively. They have every angle locked down. It is just one remaining, and they were rotating, allowing the second player along A, hiding away in sewers. And, well, they're going to have to move through defender spawn to find anybody. But this is a flawless result so far for Boise State.
Again, another one of these rounds where, I mean, you don't put instinct on the push with the rest of the team. You have a secondary duelist, sure, but I mean, it's not enough. You're lacking the flashes in that situation. You don't have enough to actually cover you to get onto the site. And, well, another situation, as we said prior, where you're just disrespecting them. You're not giving Boise State enough respect. And while we're trying to tell and preach that to the entire league right now, keep in mind they still have to win this map and the next to get to a point where anybody else could face them. But, I mean, that Swiss stage kind of aggression doesn't work here. They care more. They want it more. They're in a bracket stage. This is a one-and-done type situation. You cannot just run at them and treat them as if they are going to fold over for you.
Everything here you have to work for. Everything here has a certain drive that you have to contend against. And Boise State are obviously showing they are here for a reason in playoffs. They want to continue to be here in playoffs, and you're the obstacle that's in their way, and they will bulldoze you if required to accomplish that task. But St. Clair are no pushover, and they have been very good about winning a lot of these rounds. And when they find a gap they can take advantage of, look, they'll do exactly that. Instinct alongside one more in Garage, hoping for a chance now. Second effort here to run it back. They'll step straight through the snakebite. They don't care. They can spot Daimyo in that corner. It's a great call to make to a teammate. And now Boise State are in this scenario where they have players spotted, but they are re-swinging angles that feel like a non-necessity. And because of that, St. Clair are coming away with not just an extra man, but 2 extra men to their efforts and make it 3. Why don't you? Because Instinct is on top of things, rolling through this B site with the final frag falling to JP. Boise State defense finally shows a gap, and St. Clair capitalize.
I would have just find themselves an advantage of 1 by the end of that. But, I mean, still, for this being their map selection, we saw a much bigger disparity on Haven, which was St. Clair's selection. So we're seeing things here not really kind of go their way, which obviously when Boise State ends up kind of choosing that first map, it lets you know, okay, we go with their second favorite map. So not really the biggest tell in the world here for St. Clair and kind of what their game plan is or what they're kind of engaging for. They're just dealing with the hand that was dealt to them. And, well, they got to make sure to kind of deal with the damage to follow it up. Sky, this player who is not really been performing all that well so far inside of this matchup, will continue to not be able to do too much, as that operator did not find nearly as much impact of what you would have liked, and well, even then still didn't even find a shot, unfortunately. So Split is not the map to do it. If you're going to station an operator on this map, you can be back towards screens, or you need to be up inside the middle of the map. And well, even there still, Skelesis pushing up with that Bucky could not get anything done, but there are more players still available. You got Master coming on the flank, back from this attacker side spawn, and we're going to see what he can really manage to do here. Instinct's going to go ahead and find the lap around, try to get up back towards Heaven, maybe get a bit of a flank on a Daimyo. It really just comes down to timing here, whether or not we can actually see the delay come through from St. Clair. And with a bit of a distraction towards Daimyo's direction, you make sure to find one. KOS gets the exchange, but this is not a 1v2 like last time. It is a 1v5. Now make it 3. Master gets another, but understandably so. Things are not looking too good for you. You need to go ahead and get out of dodge while you can, but even then still, JP gets you on the cutoff, and well, we see number 6 going to St. Clair's favor, giving them an even half worst case scenario now.
St. Clair, this is exactly what was required of them. Make a comeback after Boise State bought themselves back into this first half and make sure anything and everything that's come to this point doesn't come back to bite them ultimately at the end. But so much of this has been on the weight and shoulders of instinct, opening kills, movement, even in rounds where St. Clair hitting mid and have pressure through garage. Instinct is solo prowling off towards A. There's so much of this offense is being facilitated off one man, and if Boise State can realize that and counter that, it feels like St. Clair are going to be back into the same moments they were having 2 rounds before, right? When it got tied to the 4-4 splits. How Boise State got there. Success stories that came from it afterwards, but it will still be a first blood for St. Clair, something that this team has been really reliant on. Nightfall will also be called to counteract what is the ultimate place down for the Vipers pit of Boise State, and hopes to just press through what is a lot of the Viper utility, I should say, more so here towards ropes, as they haven't had to move to the Vipers pit. But Seth locks out the Viper, rotates back through ropes. Again, St. Clair dominating map control, and it's just a question of can they catch these players as they continue to transgress into open space like Master through Arcade, as they'll shut things down further and further, leading in to another round win in this 4v1.
I'm curious to see what exactly Skelos is going to do in this situation as well, all things considered. I mean, you're in a 1v4 situation, you got nothing but a Bucky in hand, and unfortunately, the one time you run into a fight to kick things off, you don't have that Bucky in hand, so you get a knife. So
Last round before the
there goes
switch.
that point. But as a follow-up, we're on the last round of the half, and St. Clair guaranteed themselves at least an advantage by the end of this. So, I mean, obviously a 2-round disparity, worst-case scenario. I mean, a bit of a breathing room for them. Not as good as what we saw during map number 1, but still enough nonetheless to kind of go ahead and learn your lesson. With that double duelist, we're going to be looking at St. Clair having to make a bit of a mentality shift during the second half, knowing they're running from that very aggressive, kind of running it down to a degree, and even then still having to kind of learn how to tame that on the attacking side of the map, and going over to defense, we're not just going to play more so for the retake, or even more so just kind of rely on JP to say, hey, you can hold a side on your own. We're just going to spread it everywhere else and see what we can kind of get done.
Probably will head through that Viper cloud, but so far, nothing really out for St. Clair in terms of burning utility. Another haunt will go, and Seth kind of peeks a little bit too high into the sun of Instinct's curveball. They'll get a ton of information still that Skelsis is inside of vent and hopes to flush them back off towards ropes. That paint shell at least accomplishes that task. But it's JP to knock down a lonesome player prowling into no man's land, and more so into attacker territory. This is Boise State making a decision to over-aggress, and they're regressing in player count thanks to its second sin swing. Seth, who was hit by that relay bolt, sends Tillo down almost like a Pokemon to accomplish their job in front of them. Daimyo, with a judge in hand, can execute Instinct's pursuit into Heaven on B. Do they still have one player down below? In through garage, meaning St. Clair have the tertiary pressure for a dual-pronged approach, and as long as they can catch KOS with a paranoia in time, they could have kept that player honest, but they failed to do so, and KOS has a chance for a second, though Woody at least shuts it down. Man advantage regained, and St. Clair Seth, man, is going crazy in this series. The man does not want to see his team fall short, and is almost guaranteed to punch this ticket in for an 8-4 split heading into halftime, into the next half. But Master still has plenty of chances to shine, especially with the gun they have in hand, but it's going to be an uphill effort, and they are running out of time to do so as Father Time ticks in favor the other way. Guardian could be traded for a Vandal. There it is. 14 bullets to their name in this clip. Master swings the corner. No one in outside cubby. Everyone holding outside lane for Pillar. Lays down smoke. Will tap this. Likely to hold it towards half. Will they go ahead and pre-spray the hold? Master will extend out. They catch him off, and there it is. Woody to execute. St. Clair get 8 at half.
Big picks there and big round win coming through from St. Clair, especially on their map selection. Able to go ahead and manage at least 8-4. I mean, obviously, as I said, still a small disparity from what we saw on map number 1, 9-3. But, I mean, still worse, all things considered. But it's Haven, man. I mean, that thing's been around the map pool for ages as well. What feels like kind of second to only the likes of Ascent. And, well, even then, it feels like this team is one of those that always likes to opt in for it. So, understandably so, keeping things close, keeping things interesting, but keeping things humble, to say the least, to go right back to a pistol round and see kind of how things are going to go here. Because on map number 1, Boise State was usually leading these pistol rounds, looking very dominant during them. But, well, St. Clair, they obviously won the first 2 here. It made round number 3 very difficult to recover from Boise State. So they could go ahead and do it once more, but they're on the defensive now. They don't get to choose when these fights take place, unless they want to do that same kind of push thing we saw during map number 1. But in Split, it's a lot more difficult.
Wow, look at the speed of Skelesis. They refuse to back down, but still will ultimately fall to the hands of Tillo. But Boise State still scrape away 1 kill in the process. Not even 4-on-4. 2 players only up through ropes. Knows the whole team now for Boise State as they'll execute Seth, who was trying to play a little bit more stalwart down on side. JP gets jump skipped by Daimyo with that right click. And Tillo will extend through this toxic screen and get a ton of damage off towards not just Daimyo, but KOS for the finisher just the same. They may be down a player, but with low HP Daimyo and guns that could be very good at this distance, like the Ghost in the hands here of Woody, this is a very claimable objective round with that one-way smoke layered and Sky's being spotted. You need assistance, but that crossfire wasn't perfect. But Tillo very well may be. 4 kills for Tillo. Daimyo, who was licked around that corner of the approach, already low in HP, but VAL timing is truly different. And Daimyo peaks the same damn pillar as everybody else, Dallas, and secures that round win for Boise State.
Again and again, just people loving these screens, man. Loving to watch these deep angles as if we're holding these aggressively and just kind of wanting to die in the process. But the comment had to be made of how much damage was done, and well, rightfully so. Boise State just going ahead and trying to at least skip around and maybe manage to pull that thing out by the end. So good looks there once more for them to go ahead, put this round differential to only 3, on the comeback a little bit. We're expecting a 2 rounds out of them, kind of back-to-back going forward after this. But even in still, it comes down to round number 3 and how much they can manage to bring into this next, because when there was no player really stationed towards rope, beside obviously Instinct, but just a lot of easy retreats coming through here. That even in the simplest of utility is just managing to get these players out of dodge and have no association with that part of the map.
Skelesis will kind of wait their time out as their teammate swings to clear mail. No one's in that direct mail corner. Instead, JP was holding the deeper angle within Heaven itself. Looking to send maybe a player the other way, but so far Boise State will just vacate the premises. I don't think this is a terrible idea. If you can't find any safety nets in front of you, might as well fall back and say you've already fought for mail, no one was there. Just rotate towards an opposing angle. You have no confirmation. You have no information to grab thanks to the lack of utility in a round where you're kind of saving a whole lot. And you need to get onto B site, but if you don't apply tertiary pressure to accomplish that task, Dallas, they're going to have to kind of brute force this B garage. And the only thankful aspect is nobody's on B except for that one Heaven player. And if they smoke up Heaven like they've just done, they very well have their ticket to paradise.
Yeah, hello B site. Ready for the taking. Obviously going to go ahead and station up around it.
30 seconds
Giving up
left.
nothing in the process, just waiting more so for St. Clair to make a play of their own. And well, that's going to be the retake coming in their way. And even then, we've seen St. Clair, I talk about this aggression, usually not really working out too well for them. Even then, they ended up to kind of want to buy to a degree for this round, and that Bucky being understandable, knowing how cheap it is, but everything beyond that, what else is left for you? Well, the Bucky that's going to go ahead and be facing up against you, which I feel like has gotten a lot more value out of it now, finding its second.
Except in a weird spot. Snakebite will buy them a lot of time towards walkway, and their lonesome teammate of Instinct away in Heaven does not stay there. Seth alone. KOS willing to swing this. Another player wrapping down through stairs through defender spawn. Well, the round will be won here for the side of Boise State. Seth will tap this spike and really just pray. If there is time, they could get it. There is definitely not enough, but they'll die to the spike detonation and not hand over the boons of that frag to the Boise State roster. And those weapons will be carried over for Boise State into the next. Slowly etching round after round to close that gap, Dallas, but it is still St. Clair leading by 2, and they have their chance to continue that mold of Valor with a 2-1 start like they did in the first half.
Yeah, I mean, even then they could go ahead and break it. I mean, if we see a lot of good Bucky value come through once more, maybe Skelos just find a couple kills with that Phantom in hand, or Daimyo just kind of go off with that Bulldog, having those Seekers to snuff out where the players of St. Clair could be. I mean, we could see this once again kind of go in Boise State's favor and find themselves at 7. It's up to St. Clair to create the stall to slow things down. They don't have any Sentinel on their team, but not just Boise State. So there is no denial really in play here. Very contrary to what we saw during that first series where we were running the single sentinel, the double sentinel, a lot of just denial here. But it's nothing but go for these two teams. And well, as Boise State has gotten on to the B side, as they just went over there and with feasibly little to no kind of stall again, they're continuing their pursuits back towards spawn. They are continuing to, well, go.
Speaking of the go button, Instinct's in a weird spot. Almost caught in a reload there. Oof, timing tight. Two players back through defender side spawn. Tillo sprays down Daimyo, but it is still a 3 versus 2, and Boise State have control over the objective, but with Skelis getting eviscerated by JP from up above. Master now is alone, and that's planted for them, but nothing's going to matter. The Phantom does enough pressure, does enough damage straight to the head, and St. Clair will come away the victor of this round, getting up to 9. 3 rounds despair between these two teams, but there is no despairing if you're Boise State. You are very much so still in this, and the pressure is still back on your shoulders to accomplish what you had failed to do on map 1. Make the recovery from a much closer standing, mind you, but make that recovery and make your presence known in the second half on offense, where you've already shown some glimpses of some highlight reels.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen Boise State have plenty of highlight reels today just alone. St. Clair feel like they've had a little bit more kind of a hero presence on a round-to-round basis. We've seen some nice, 3Ks come through from Instinct. Tillo kind of have some good mid-rounds like we've typically seen out of the guy just in general. But beyond that, I mean, what else are we getting here? And, well, a Nightfall is on the field, but it's just not in play yet. It's inside of a back pocket. Boise State more so just the guns in hand to play with. And while you're waiting for somebody else besides Daimyo and Master and KOS, one of those other two remaining players are really just kind of stick it to the man, really get in there. And while Skies, while struggling during the defensive side, this is the part where you're saying, hey, I'm a duelist. So long as I'm distracted, I've done my job. And maybe a couple of shots back towards A main. Gives Daimyo enough time to go ahead and find a kill there. Nightfall comes through, lets you know how many players are actually going to be on site, and let you know, spoiler, hella. And Master being one of those makes easy work of anybody who wants to go ahead and contest it.
1v3. St. Clair, big deficit, and if you're the last remaining Omen, do you even step close to side? I don't think so, and I think Woody's been given the calm. That ain't happening, Chief. It was a judge in hand, not even a rifle. This was a weird buy scenario for St. Clair anyways, because they were carrying over the last remnant weapons, and there wasn't much exiting that last round, just 2, and the rest of the team was just kind of left up to wonder what was left, and they'll throw over a piece of smoke utility to kind of distract and lead Boise State into thinking maybe they are, in fact, going forward and sneaking or edging their way forward into a spot for an exit frag, but I don't think Boise State will fall to it, and they won't care whatsoever. They'll escape back towards security, out into defender spawn, and it'll be a round win for Boise State, credited on the scoreboard, and frankly, credited in their eyes. That is as clean-cut choice of victory you could ask for at the Butcher's table. They diced up St. Clair very easily, and the take to that A site was about as clean as you could ask for, thanks to that first frag to Instinct on Walkway on that Cowhawk Dallas, followed up by the huge pressure they had towards site, despite the Nightfall and all the utility coming up to close off sightlines. They did not let the player of JP nor let Tillo, who's kind of the big player there, get more than one on that lane and shut down what could have been very bad for them if they let them get more than that first.
Yeah, I mean, just seeing kind of what's coming out here from the St. Clair. I mean, not terrible efforts across the board, but just more so a little lackluster at times. And one of those rounds just being one of those where it doesn't feel like either. It just feels a little unfortunate. So seeing how things are going, another round to run back. Boise State obviously putting a lot of the gas here towards the A site initial push. But, I mean, keep in mind they have plenty of time to go ahead and facilitate something else. The issue is we already see a bit of a push coming through from St. Clair to kind of establish that middle presence. While you also have Tillo back towards garage saying, hey, they're not B, so you guys that are towards the middle, go ahead and push up into heaven. They're going to come over there. So go ahead and have some players ready for it.
We'll quickly dash onto site, the forward and right flick to get into the objective. JP will shut down the first. Once a second, maybe overstays their welcome on the attempt. But you get your 1-for-1, and St. Clair can maybe work with this moments afterwards, though obviously the gun disparity will hurt you. And you wanted to use that paint shell. Might have opted to do so, Seth, because you will not be contending against Master for that next swing. And now will Instinct off towards KOS. 2 versus 4. What are you to do? Woody is in a current hopscotch game right now, trying to jump across both ends, but Skies will flank in. Instantly be shut down by Tillo, who's just trying to make this economy more of a toss-up for this round for Boise State. Drop some guns out of their hand, make them pay the price for dealing with your team so easily, and maybe trying to build up on what could be a actual defensive holdout for an A site, because currently I'm not seeing anything that shows St. Clair are capable of defending this objective, though obviously this one in Eco, we saw the round before, it most definitely was not. They have found a win condition, and it seemingly is this quick rush waylay dash onto A.
Yeah, I mean, seemingly so. I mean, look for the site where JP's just kind of all by his lonesome. It's not as much of a suffocating kind of, hold as what you have on the likes of Corrode or any other map where you have that singular avenue into sight. I mean, even then if you're going to be garage, that's why we don't see that dash kind of coming through too much there. But keep in mind, JP usually likes to kind of have that veto selection or the chamber, something to kind of go ahead and create that stall inside that narrow entry onto a site. Issue is you can't really facilitate that same thing over towards the A side on split, because they could just say, to hell with your main, we're just going to go through heaven instead. And we'll leave it in, kind of burns the potential of any other utility coming through. But talking about utility, plenty of it coming out to kick things off. We don't see the, run it back, but we see the, impromptu run it back with the not dead yet pushing over in towards that B side. Boise State trying to get as much presence as they can over here. Not enough real reinforcements there just yet, as we have one player that's trying to go right back up into heaven. Maybe had a bit of a contention, a way to stall, but Boise State do not give in. They turn tail, and then they have a whole minute left. So why not mess with their brains a little bit? Pick at them for a second.
Kind of like a bait and switch, right? I mean, you could pretend to poke in an opposing side. It's not like giving you utility you could send that way. I mean, you could toss up the toxic screen in hopes that maybe a player is over there and will make the comm, but so far, St. Clair have been pretty stalwart about holding on to this objective and not rotating out just yet. Instead, they'll work their way off towards vending, down bottom mid. Will eventually go lower sewer. They'll send one player through vending in hopes to maybe catch a player off guard in garage, but the call will be made. JP will say they are on site, and I am dead, folks. This is not going to be a very pretty retake at this point in time, but KOS is planting this for garage, and guess where the two players, or at least one of these two players, is currently coming in from? Seth from garage. Daimyo peeking the wrong way, gets one, hopes for a second. Skies is there. Paint shell up and over, doesn't make it. Hopes to get a second lick opportunity, but Skies is too much. They're better. And Tillo from up above. They're questioning whether or not this is truly an opportunity they have to go for. KOS will peek the other way. They send out a tether to keep them there. They'll also try to swing hard and heavy. Gets it, looks for the second, but no! One round misses its target, and Skies lives with 2 HP, and Boise State have punched their way to an even 9-9 split.
Skies finally waking up a little bit, getting a little more on that board. Now tying with Skelesis after the end of that round. So good looks there, but still not enough to kind of really get up there where you want those two duelists to be. I mean, we talk about the whole duelist distractions, predicament that we're in, but I mean, still, Instig's able to do that, and he's going 16-13. Seth's able to do that, going 14-13, but the rest of the team, honestly, the distraction may not be just in the role of the fact that you're dying, but it could be to let your other teammates, just what you feel like should be performing less as much compared to your duelist, just kind of sneak by and just completely rinse the competition, as they are all just going crazy at the moment.
Seth is, I don't know, this St. Clair side kind of feels desperate right now. This is getting out of hand. I would expect more time to articulate things. That'd be a 45-second wait as they have Boise State already on site planting. They're just biding time, or a timeout, whatever it is. I think a talk there needs to be made. Otherwise, we will have that third map, and Boise State will have done what West Virginia and Stony Brook is not able to accomplish, see a third map. The shotgun is out for JP. Both are caught in its wake. And JP will be forced to flush away with a snake bite back the other way. And he's just waiting. He does not care. It is that spike that needs to be collected for Boise State that's in no man's land. That shotgun was still around the corner, and you can see Masters very wary of it. Showstopper out for Steph. Two in that corner. That will make impact to both of them. Boom goes the team of Boise State, as it's a flawless thrifty round for St. Clair.
Plenty of eco to go around to the rest of the team. The reinforcements have arrived, and guess what? We got plenty of utility coming with us, y'all. We know he sure as hell ain't got weapons this time around, but I mean, JP still managed to get 2 off a single Bucky shot. What was that? I'm genuinely still asking. I'm not really quite sure because that is just insane. I mean, usually you see the pellet allocation kind of going so much into a singular point, or even then being more kind of spread out over the course of a singular, that circle to maybe find a single player. Even then, Excite, we saw Excite miss a couple opportunities, and even then, Dinks not really able to find a kill with the Bucky out of the singular shot with that circle zoned in on a player. But Petty at 2 is just insane. But doesn't matter too much considering that St. Clair, while they had a beautiful last round that was not handed to them, but definitely earned, after the fact, they could be right back into a tie situation if they end up continuing this trend of going on for one, knowing the man advantage is not theirs anymore.
Seth is watching from high ground, is able to see KOS, but a close call in the fight on A. But it is still Boise State hitting B side in hard. Shots go out in connection. Tillo, that's a first, make it a second. Tillo has been lights out and feels like it's been required from this player. Seeker pressing them. Eventually will fall to Master, who's got their second in a row. 3 total for this round, but they're alone. It will require an ace to accomplish what's in front of them. The damage has been dealt. If you see a Phoenix on the board, you see utility down, you'd anticipate that it's there, but a perfect flash from Instinct alongside the pressure from Seth will, yes, give up 1 kill, but the refrag is instantaneous and puts St. Clair up to 11. 1 match away from one round away, from match and series points. They just have to collect themselves and not let that bleeding spree they had Boise State go on for a little bit there come back to bite them.
And even then, I mean, there's a good shot for it because, I mean, keep in mind, one of the top players, while Master does, yes, have a gun in hand, and so does KOS, Daimyu is going to be stuck on the Bandit for this round. So doesn't really have enough money to kind of go ahead, buy up the rest of the team, kind of be on the same page, but even then still doesn't really need too much of that. So long as you have the utility, you could definitely facilitate the rest of the team's success here because, well, that's Sky. Not as much as KO when it comes around to assist Central, but pretty darn close with the amount of heals, the Trailblazer, the guiding light, everything else available at their disposal to make things much, much easier. But even then, still, one thing you can't account for, Instinct and JP swinging out towards mid, going ahead, finding 2 players, and, well, making this round seem basically done before it's even started as a third has come underway.
Yeah, it's just a trickle effect, the snowball effect, just barreling down into the shoulders of Boise State. Everything's so close to its final goal, to the end result they need, they have to continue here in the playoffs for Division 1. Kind of being thrown back in their face right now. And Daimyo, we talk about clutch players. This is one of them of all time here. Koji experience and more. Analysts, but right now, this is a player. They have to stay on focus. They have to commit. And with Spike back down towards attacker spawn as well, I think Boise State are still in the kind of regression phase of the round. Can they find kills? What can they do even if they do? And what is left in the wake of St. Clair finding this? 3 kills in a row off towards bottom mid. And the controller, Hugh controls mid, controls this map. And I think St. Clair stamped it with that round result. And this is where 45 seconds for St. Clair could have been used for talking. Well, Boise State have used the last minute for the exact same thing, even with KOS and more kind of crawling around the overall orifices of this map. Yeah. It has been St. Clair only to find success. Not even a glimpse for anyone on Boise State to see someone.
Another one to St. Clair's name, that match series point you're talking about, well, inevitable now. As we do look at the score line, and it's definitive on the field, and, well, it is at a point where Boise State, while they couldn't really manage to get the full buy on for this round, well, they sure as heck aren't going to be able to manage it right here as things get even more awkward. Barely ultimates to their names, half armor galore, and meanwhile, St. Clair, sure, they don't have many ultimates of their own either, but a singular Nightfall for a retake is going to prove very, very effective, and I think that's the one thing that is going to give Boise State the lead here if they want to keep their dream alive is Master not having 1 life but having 2. So long as they get that spike down, create these kind of close quarter fights where we see St. Clair pushing in, he should be able to find at least 2 off of that.
Instinct waits. Everyone ready on the approach for Boise State. It's a 3-2 split. 2 players off towards mid. One watching at a spot where they're kind of stuck. But the exit frag and the rotate frag not available. Caught in transition would be the concept we saw across Bind earlier in the first series, Dallas. Now maybe the chance to have the exact same thing. KOS spots a player. Instinct will quickly cross back. They do not want to get stuck inside Mail, especially with the utility that is in the back pocket of Boise State. That could be an issue. Molly will be dropped. Master will extend past it. The guessing game is there for Instinct. Now confirmed. Did Master pass the volley? And it did, as they'll use the Nightfall and more. Utility for the relay bolt. So much damage done. And with the HP being lower thanks to the ultimates, It should be easy cleanup for it. The not dead yet is popped. Master goes into the corner. Will get their kill. Takes down Instinct. 20 HP in a dream. Has to overheal. Accomplishes that task. But the regrowth as well will put you back up to full HP. And St. Clair exit that middle stage. The negative victors of that battle only just now finding a kill off of Tillo. Who else to even the odds as Woody is trapped in the execution away from sight. Skies with a second after dealing with JP. Master knocks down the pick piece that is Seth, and it's just Tillo. 1 versus 3. Tillo time online. This could be double digits for Boise State to stay alive and maybe force OT, or it could be St. Clair pulling off a miracle from this fade to accomplish the task. Everyone is low. Gets the first. Cannot find the damage onto the corner copy player, and thanks to it, Boise State will survive. Maybe not thrive, but they stay alive on split.
All right, the not dead yet coming in huge there, making sure those numbers are equal by the end of that skirmish towards the middle of the map occurs. But even then still, I mean, not enough reinforcements from St. Clair's side, just kind of transitioning over towards that B site. Not enough presence in heaven, not enough eyes on the prize, not enough people going ahead and shooting birds, which is Sky. It's kind of flashing through and getting that presence and finding that kill to follow the fact. And, well, obviously, there's more rounds to go, but, I mean, there's only kind of one more round of leeway here to kind of really go ahead and put yourself as a definitive winner here. Because keep in mind, as we talked about it, Boise State wants this just as much as anybody else. They may be, you know, obviously seed 6, but look at the match in front of us, dude. We were looking at a 13-8 on Haven. We're looking at a 10-12 on Split. This is not a seed number 6. This is we had a 3-way tie for number 3. This is number 4 here.
Zeph executing 2, has a teammate nearby. They flash themselves. No, Daimyo! Unlucky, and Sav with a showstopper out will have no one to find. It's a 4-on-2, but it could be an even 2-on-2 for this B side if they get there fast enough. The majority of these sightlines are being vacated by St. Clair. They don't want to test against it. They'll try to use the lip of this awning to go unseen by Skelesis and knock them down. They accomplish their task. Sky's down at 31 HP after dealing with Woody, and JP just barely licking at their lips to go for this kill. It's a stand-up swing on the rope. What a connection, Skies. Hero moment maybe this way for Boise State. And Spike is in hand, and they very well could get this plane down on B site. Maybe could rotate A, but we talk about how wide this map feels. It would be hard-pressed to reach that site in time with what little is left. You do have the dash, maybe close that distance, but feels like you maybe would have needed to do that a lot sooner. They'll go up through tower to drop down faster. Could be seen off ropes. No, they'll get away with it. Drop down into sight. They'll plant it for tower, and Instinct right around the bend. May just confirm it. There it is. St. Clair, 13-10 on map 2, just the same. Ending this series and sending themselves further into playoffs.
Well, we're looking at the same kind of stance as things go moving forward, but instead on the opposite side of the field, we clearly got West Virginia moving on. Here right now, St. Clair, welcome back to the semifinals. It wasn't nearly as easy to get here as it was last time, but hey, welcome back anyways. You got a bit of a road ahead of you. You got some things to iron out because Boise State clearly, while they didn't give you a whooping, they definitely bruised the hell out of you.
Boise State brought forward everything here, and I think just a couple of round mistakes, a couple in a row moments that could have gone either way that ultimately didn't favor you, right? This was a lot closer for series than I think many people were anticipating. I think we would have the conversation in the production booth beforehand. Dallas, you and I were straight up saying Boise State could absolutely accomplish this task. This is very much so a possibility. Nobody can count them out of this one, and I think they did it justice. Even though they didn't force the third map, they brought first one much closer after the result at halftime into the same thing here on map 2, making it very close, even taking the lead for a short time frame there.
Yeah, I mean, looking at St. Clair still trying to figure out a lot of these hiccups, honestly. I mean, semifinals, we talked about having to lock in today. They clocked in. I don't really know about locking in because they were there. I mean, they were present. They were playing, and they were doing what they do best. But they just didn't do it to the same kind of capability that we see at a lot of these teams. It's that situation where I'm always kind of like annoyed we don't have more teams in the playoffs because I feel like, I mean, just going immediately from what we see into facing Maryville and Winthrop is just like, well, not really sure how that's going to go, but there is time nonetheless. There's an entire week here for St. Clair to figure it out once more, but even then still, again, it's going to be the same thing where I feel like Winthrop kind of looking at this matchup, seeing how things are going, the same way Maryville probably was the previous series. They're probably just sitting back in their chairs or watching at home on their second monitor and just kind of seeing that score, and their first reaction is, It's going to be a nice, easy next week. And you can't have that. You can't have that out of your opposition. But once again, we could see that complacency kind of being corrupt to a degree and giving Winthrop a bit of a overconfidence that could give St. Clair a nice early lead, but we can't run the same situation as Grand Finals last split where they ended up going 2-0 and then eventually completely dropped the ball.
Yeah, I mean, a 13-1 bind was the thing that really started it off. Did you recover mentally enough there? And even when it came back to, sunset at the end, it was close, but Maryville said and felt like they were in control the entire time, no matter what the scoreline had said. But, they say absolute power corrupts absolutely, and that's kind of the idea you're hoping for against Maryville and Winthrop. They are absolute powers, the cream of the crop, the pinnacle of the collegiate space, as they're not just doing collegiate, they're semi-pro, they're pro for some of these players, right? So you have to hope that they kind of view you negligently. They have to hope that they under-expect what you're going to bring to the table, and you can catch them off guard with it. And if you can't catch them off guard, you better damn well hope you brought your A game, because if you do, you very well can take them down. West Virginia is capable of taking down Maryville. They thought though themselves, they said it, I agree with them. I think it's the same thing here for St. Clair. They could take down Winthrop. They just have to bring their A game to accomplish that task. But with that being said, we're not done with the side here of St. Clair. We have an interview to come with one of their players, but unfortunately we are done with Boise State. So a big shout out to Boise State and what they brought to the table, but 2 maps will be all they get here today. None of them going their way. We'll be back after a quick break. Don't go anywhere after this. A St. Clair interview.
What would you do if you couldn't fail? Would you see every setback as a catalyst to keep going? This is the innovator's mindset. Because innovation demands daring. It's finding thousands of ways that don't work, and the one that changes everything. Because we know changing the world doesn't happen by chance. It comes out of the blue.
So patient with you, don't you know? I've been so down with you, and you know it. You never come around, and I show it. Just give me one chance right now, and I won't blow it. I won't blow it. Oh. And you know, I see better days. Through some things, yeah, I've been sending prayers through the roof. Oh, truth, yeah. Don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh, don't need all the answers, just tell me what life is for. One day I'ma wake up with a reaper at the door. Don't need all the answers, just say anything at all. I've been praying for a minute, I've been waiting on your call. Oh. I've been waiting on you, yeah.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Tillo in the booth here. Look how relaxed he is after a victory like that one in a hard-fought affair. But nonetheless, congratulations, Tillo, on your victory here. It was a pretty hard-fought battle through those two maps.
Yeah, it was pretty closer than we'd like, but you know, hero plays from everyone, and then yeah, walked out with the W.
That was kind of our big concern heading into this one, was how would the hero plays work. Feels like everyone on your roster is capable of it, but sometimes it can be a little bit hard to find a hero. Sometimes you have too many heroes. I felt like y'all found a pretty good balance in this series, but they had plenty of heroes as well, and that obviously was a tough battle for you across map 1 and 2. Were you surprised by individuals on their team, or was it just the overall cohesiveness of their team that made this as close of a battle as you thought it was?
I think a couple of them were just having some games, or just some rounds, which happens. But yeah, they played solid. I don't think it was anything that we weren't ready for, and we just happened to win more rounds than they did. But kudos to them. They played a good game.
I mean, that's usually Boise State when it comes around to the playoff stage. I mean, this is the second split now. We've had a three-way tie when it comes around to that third place. So, effectively, they're not even really 6th seed. They're more like the 4th seed. And it felt like there was at times where you guys were treating them more like a 6th seed than a 4th seed. But understandably so. How do you think that kind of measures y'all's mental coming in for next week, knowing you guys are going to be going up against Winthrop, which arguably should be the easier of the two against Maryville, considering they got 2-0 by Maryville as well?
Yeah, I'm excited. I had a pretty good game against them, actually, so I'm happy we're able to run it back. And we've had a couple close games with them, not even just in Div 1, but in NACE as well. NACE, we went Game 3, and then Div 1, I think we got 2-0'd, but Map 2 was really close. So I'm excited. They're fun to play. Hopefully they think the same, and yeah, it's always a fun game versus them.
All right. Well, I'll bring up your composition just a little bit here. Obviously, y'all have had some roster changes throughout from last split to this split, and the big one kind of being Seth, stepping away from just that coaching role into playing, and kind of felt like he was struggling a little bit through the mainstay season. Y'all now put him over to somewhere he had glimpses of success before, but it was nothing crazy. That duelist position, right? Y'all had brought him in at Phoenix previously on Haven, so y'all now moved him over to the primary role for that. How is that, as a decision for the team? Was just give Seth reins and let them go off, or is this through trying to shake off the dusty old bones of Seth to show what they were capable of in the past and prime and now coming back?
Well, prior to the season, me and Woody were gonna just play double initial comps. That was the idea, and then they got in initiators, and I feel like we've been behind the meta even last season when we made finals. We're just always playing these non-double duelist comps and making the game super hard for ourselves. And for whatever reason, it was extra hard when we implemented Woody. So we're you want to know what? Woody just go smoke, Steph go double duelist, I'll go back to main initiator, and that's kind of how we're gonna roll for the rest of the playoffs and probably the rest of the semester.
I mean, funny again. I mean, to lead off of that, you guys talked about kind of Woody and Seth stepping in and seeing how that's going to be going, and knowing that y'all kind of feel like behind the meta to a degree. But speaking of Woody and speaking of Seth and these two players, I mean, more so, how do you feel like that integration has gone? Because we just talked about Seth and how him on that duelist has felt a little bit awkward compared to when we saw him on the Viper and on the Omen and things like that back in the day. But now being in that situation where we see kind of Woody now stepping into those shoes, how do you feel like over the course of the season he's kind of integrated himself? And do you feel like this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg of what y'all have to present?
Yeah, I mean, overall, there's a lot of growing pains. It was kind of tough to figure out roles and figure out compositions. But I think Steph has done a great job stepping in. And, kudos to him. And then Woody also, you saw the Haven game. I'm pretty sure he owned on Omen.
Yeah.
So they're both pretty comfortable and they're good players. So they just pick up the roles and just roll with it.
Rolling with those punches, Dallas. I'll try to toss another bone out to social media team. Do you have any words you'd like to give to this Winthrop roster that you're about to head into going into next week?
I just hope for a good game, and hopefully we can finally squeeze one away from them. Yeah, nothing but respect over there.
All right. Well, respect is where respect is earned, and I feel like Winthrop's done a good job of that now. Your chance to prove yourselves again. Y'all made it to the grand finals once. There's no way to say you can't do it again here. But I'll give you a chance to shout out anyone you're thankful for, your team, your family, anyone. Here's your chance to shine.
Yeah, I always shout out the same people, but my girl, family, and then shout out the Div 1 media team. They made a cool video featuring all the team's highlights, so I thought that was cool. Make sure to check it out if you're tuning in. And yeah, all love everywhere. All love from Saints. You guys have a good night.
Thank you very much, Tillo. It's been a pleasure. Dallas. We started off playoffs and, well, West Virginia take away and remove Stony Brook from Division I contention, despite them breaking out and beating Winthrop last split in playoffs in round 1. They make it no further here again. And now you had a Boise State testing the waters against St. Clair and giving them a run for their money, but Tillo showed up and made sure to bring out the opposite end of Tillo time, aka pillow time, if they were not active and just snoozing there in the feed. But thankfully they were very much so active, but Boise State had to pay the price for it.
Yeah, again, I mean, Boise State, we kind of, sang their graces during the last split as well. It's always so phenomenal to see what they can do once they get kind of later into the season, but it's so unfortunate to see this kind of grit come through only during the playoffs. I mean, because obviously we have a lot of graduating players. We're not going to see the same reflection of this team next year, and it's really unfortunate, man, because I genuinely think this team could have been a contender inside that mix of the three-way tie and been the separating cause, been the one to just break that glass that is, this whole line between what was the upper echelon and bottom echelon, and they could have put their way into, even maybe number 3 overall. But it just always feels like it comes a little bit too little too late. I mean, 13-8 on Haven, 13-10 on Split. I mean, against St. Clair, who loves both of those maps. I mean, any other team in the league, I feel like you kind of really bring that, but it feels like they were putting too much attention on kind of their game plans, figuring things out, kind of solidifying stuff instead of just saying, hey, y'all, we're shooting like hell out there. Let's just go give more of that to them.
It's this weird mixed bag of saying you wanted to see that improvement a lot quicker, but I don't think that improvement could have happened without those losses they took, right? I don't think those improvements would have ever happened if they hadn't taken the, the learning experience from them and continued to improve and evolve. And it, unfortunately, yes, comes too little too late. If they had maybe 2, maybe 3 more matches in between this series and between the actual end of the season before we jumped into playoffs, I think they would have absolutely been a contender for 4th, for 3rd, for 5th, right? Much further on. And playoffs obviously would have changed entirely thanks to that. And this game and series could have changed entirely, and St. Clair would have been, previous grand final event, appearance to knocked out in round 1. That's just how close it ultimately felt. But with that being said, they're still in it. St. Clair are still alive and thriving, and they just have to deal with Winthrop in front of them. If you missed this series 1, it was Stony Brook versus West Virginia. West Virginia came away the victor in a pretty good series, not requiring map 3 and even overtime victory on Bind. Their pick that they had to make overtime into to force Stony Brook out here of Division 1, now having to face off against Maryville. Huge congratulations to those teams. They'll move on. We'll see them next, I believe, Sunday. In their series here for Division 1. So stay tuned on to that one. If you did your pick'ems here today, how'd you do? You can get ready for your pick'ems going into next week. That'll be the Division 1 website, free to enter, so make sure to check those out. And one last hurrah here, Dallas, to the teams that had to bow out here for the season, those who didn't make playoffs and those who have made playoffs and now are no longer part of it. Stony Brook and Boise State, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. These teams got to move on, and you're just a part of their history. Time to make more history for yourself and a future for you. With that being said, I'm Infernosis, joined here by Mick, aka Dallas, and our production team here for Division 1. We'll see you next Sunday. Stay tuned for more.